Chapter 140. Ali, what should we do now? Yat's face was stained with wolf blood after he slashed a wolf with his sword. He looked at Ali anxiously, hoping that Ali, who was the strongest in the group, could come up with an idea. Ali, think of something. Karina, the green-haired girl in a white magician's robe, no longer had her usual elegance. There were 6 of them, 3 swordmasters and 3 magicians. Although they didn't have any casualties yet, they were exhausted after a period of constant fighting. Drew, you block them first. I have a life-saving attack scroll that my teacher gave me. I need some time to activate it. Ali, who everyone had high hopes for, didn't let them down. He indeed had a last resort. Okay. The tall but honest Drew nodded fiercely. Drew began to kill more and more fiercely, hoping to buy time for his companions to activate the scroll. However, he didn't notice that the people he thought were his companions were looking at him as if he was a fool. There was deep pity in their eyes. Yes, this was indeed Alan's last resort. However, it wasn't an attack scroll, but a random teleportation scroll. This teleportation scroll's level was relatively high. It could teleport up to 10 people at a time. It took time to activate the scroll, so someone had to stay behind to attract the attention of the wolves. Drew was the only one who joined the team later. At this time, he was the only one who would be sacrificed. Back then, they had allowed a stranger to join them because they saw that Drew was honest and had good swordsmanship. When they were in danger, Drew could help them fight for a chance to escape. It was because of this reason that they had allowed a stranger to join the team. Eli and the others rejoiced as they activated the magic scrolls. Fortunately, they had allowed this person to join the party. Otherwise, who would have been willing to make the final sacrifice? After a flash of white light, the 5 members of Ali's team disappeared. Drew, who was fighting bravely, heard the sound and thought that the attack scroll had been successfully activated. However, when he turned around, he saw Ali and the others looking at him with gloating faces. Then, they all disappeared in the white light. No matter how stupid Drew was, he knew that he had been deceived. The wolves had already surrounded him, and he had no way of surviving alone. 10 minutes later, Drew finally couldn't hold on any longer. His hand that was holding the sword was covered in wolf blood. His back, hands, and legs were all covered in blood from being bitten by the demon wolves. Due to the excessive blood loss and the loss of physical strength, Drew couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed onto the grass. At the last moment before he lost consciousness, he seemed to see a blurry shadow slowly walking towards him. Fengwu walked aimlessly for a few hours. When she reached the area where the demon wolves lived, she heard the sound of fighting. Fengwu hoped to meet Ajur and the others, so she trotted over. However, as soon as she arrived, she saw a man covered in blood lying on the ground. Fengwu wanted to ask him if he had seen Ajur and the others, so she walked over and discussed with the demonic wolves. Finally, they managed to save the man's life. When Drew woke up again, he found himself lying on a large rock. The wounds on his body had been treated. Struggling to sit up, he found a beautiful black-haired girl sitting not far from him. The girl was expressionlessly looking at the sky. When she heard him get up, she slowly turned her head to look at him. The 2 of them looked at each other like this, neither of them saying a word. In the end, Drew couldn't take it anymore. Facing Fengwu's expressionless face, he finally spoke, hello. Did you save me? Fengwu nodded. Have you seen Ajur and Mingxi? Were they her friends? Drew thought to himself, then shook his head. I haven't seen them. Oh. Fengwu replied indifferently. Then, she took out a spirit fruit from her space ring and handed it to Drew. Thank you. Drew took the spirit fruit and thanked her. All right, I'm Drew. Thank you for saving me, Drew said with a friendly smile. The pain in his body hadn't disappeared, but it was still bearable. The pain reminded him from time to time that everything he experienced was so real. If it weren't for the wounds on his body, he would have thought that he was just having a nightmare of being abandoned by his companions and almost dying under the claws of a wolf. I'm Fengwu. You're welcome. The Fengwu girl's expressionless face didn't change at all. Drew was very curious. What method did Feng Wu use to save him from the claws of so many wolves? But after seeing Feng Wu's expressionless face, he decided to raise the favorability of his savior first before asking. With that thought, Drew opened his mouth to eat the spirit fruit Feng Wu gave him. The fruit melted in his mouth and was very sweet. Not long after eating, he felt the wounds on his body itch. He slightly unwrapped the bandages to take a look. His originally bloody wounds had actually grown new flesh. The newly grown flesh was light pink and looked very delicate. This was too miraculous. Who exactly was this savior of his? She actually casually gave such a precious spirit fruit to other people to eat. While Drew was surprised, he was also somewhat touched. After experiencing the betrayal of his companions, the kindness he received from Feng Wu was so precious. He secretly swore that if there was a chance in the future, he would definitely repay this young girl who saved him. After eating the spirit fruit, Drew's wounds healed very quickly. Not long after, he was almost fully healed and could already set off on the road with Feng Wu. Feng Wu asked a few passing magical beasts along the way and really asked where the passage out of this place was. As for Ali and the others who left Drew behind to escape, they were lucky enough to be transported to a relatively peaceful area. Other than a few wandering magical beasts, there weren't any huge groups of magical beasts. This could be considered very lucky. The 5 of them firmly believed that Drew must have died under the claws of the wolf pack. Regarding Drew's death, they didn't feel anything. He was originally recruited to be cannon fodder. Now that he died, it was a worthy death. Wasn't this just right? They never would have thought that Drew's luck would be so good to meet Feng Wu, this girl with a special innate ability. Ever since Drew was saved by Feng Wu, he had been following Feng Wu. Feng Wu also didn't chase him away. She didn't dislike Drew and felt that he was a good person. Chapter 141. Drew, on the other hand, felt that the Feng Wu girl was a magical girl. As long as he was with Feng Wu, the originally dangerous prairie became a lot calmer and lovelier. Why did he feel this way? He had to start from the beginning. In the first hour of Drew and Feng Wu's journey, they encountered a large group of fire attribute magic beasts. These fire attribute magic beasts were called Raging Flame Magic Eagles. They were intermediate fire attribute magic beasts. They lived in the sky and their fire attribute magic beasts were very powerful. Moreover, these magic beasts bred very quickly and liked to fight in groups. Although they were not the most powerful magical beasts in this prairie, they were still feared by the other races because of the large number of members in their group. Think about it. If you can't beat them by yourself, they can attack you in groups. Even if they take turns fighting you, they can kill you. The higher the level of a magical beast, the more difficult it was to reproduce. The flaming magic eagles were definitely one of the most productive magical beasts in the prairie. Moreover, these magical beasts were very stingy and vengeful. If you offended one of these magical beasts, you would be hunted to death by the whole group of flaming magic eagles. When they first entered the territory of the flaming magic eagles, Drew was so scared that his legs almost turned to jelly. A few dozen magical wolves were enough to kill them all. What would hundreds and thousands of flaming magic eagles do to him and Feng Wu? This was the rhythm of tearing them to pieces. Drew's legs trembled as he protected Feng Wu behind him. No matter what, this girl was his savior. He was the one who almost died. If worst came to worst, he would try his best to block them and buy time for the girl behind him to escape. Drew clenched his teeth and tightened his grip on the knife in his hand. He was ready to fight to the death. A large group of flaming magic eagles had already surrounded them. These magical beasts' eyes were shining. They looked like they had not eaten for a long time and suddenly found an edible meal in front of them. Just as Drew was prepared to sacrifice himself for the little girl behind him, a white and tender little hand suddenly pulled him away. Don't be afraid, the eagles are friends. They won't hurt you. Feng Wu felt that Drew was afraid of her new friends not long ago, so she kindly comforted him. At the same time, Feng Wu did not understand. The eagles were clearly so cute, so why was Drew so afraid of them? Little eagles? Drew always knew that he was not smart. His father often told him not to trust others easily. If he trusted the wrong person, he would be scolded to death. The actions of Alan's group had successfully confirmed his master's words, and he, who hadn't believed it before, had already been defeated. However, he didn't expect that the blow had just begun. Why was Feng Wu's words so difficult to understand? Speaking of which, who was Xiaoying? Little eagles couldn't really mean what he understood? Don't be afraid. They are all my friends, they won't harm you. Feng Wu explained seriously, she didn't want her cute friends to be misunderstood as bad beasts. But young lady, are you sure this is a misunderstanding? The friendliness of these magical beasts isn't like this to everyone. It was a pity that Feng Wu didn't understand this at the moment. She was still clumsily trying to comfort Drew, who was so scared that his face was pale, and his hands and feet were not listening to him. Drew stared blankly at the girl who was familiar with the way to the territory of the flaming magic eagles. She ate spirit fruits, drank spirit spring water, and gave some rare spirit plants and rare magic materials as a friendly gift. Drew found that he was speechless. Unfortunately, Drew didn't know that this was just the beginning. Along the way, the Feng Wu girl brought Drew to witness her heaven-defying ability to make friends. No matter how fierce the magical beasts were, they could become good friends with the Feng Wu girl in the end. A large number of spirit fruits, spirit plants, and magic materials were given away by the magical beasts like cabbages. In fact, to the magical beasts, spirit fruits and spirit plants were very useful. Magic materials were useless to them. The weapons that magical beasts used in battle were their own bodies. They didn't need any magic materials to make weapons. The magical beasts knew that humans were very fond of these so-called magic materials, so they gave a lot of them to Feng Wu. Feng Wu had read a lot of books, so she naturally knew what these magic materials were. She happily accepted the gifts from her friends. She also took out the food she liked in the outside world and shared it with everyone. Fortunately, this girl was a foodie and always had all kinds of delicious food in her space ring. Although Feng Wu had a lot of food in her space ring, there were too many magical beasts and too little porridge. The food in Feng Wu's space ring was quickly emptied. After encountering many magical beasts, Feng Wu and Drew finally found the exit to the second stage. They didn't walk very fast. When they found the exit following the instructions of the magical beasts, there were already a lot of people gathered at the exit. The location of the exit was very special. It was actually under a pool, and there was a powerful water-type demonic beast living in the pool. The demonic beast was extremely powerful, and it was not an opponent that could be defeated by one or two people. The people who first discovered the exit had no choice but to spread the location of the exit, hoping that more people would come to kill the guardian boss together. There were at least 50 people gathered around the pool. Originally, there were a lot of people who entered this stage, but the grassland was very dangerous. Most people couldn't make it to the end and died in this stage. Xiao Wu. Not long after Feng Wu arrived, she heard a familiar voice. A sexy beauty ran toward her excitedly. Feng Wu was no stranger to this beauty. The person was Elena. Elena was followed by a somewhat disheveled Eve. When Eve saw Feng Wu, she didn't seem to care. From her expression, it was obvious that she didn't want to come over. If it weren't for the fact that she only met Elena, and that Elena seemed to want to team up with Feng Wu, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to walk up to Feng Wu. Senior Elena, Feng Wu greeted obediently. Feng Wu quite liked this senior of hers, Elena. Although she liked to touch her and Ajur always told her to be careful and not to let her take advantage of her, what kind of advantage would she take? Feng Wu couldn't think of anything. Xiao Wu, I finally met someone I know. As soon as I entered the entrance, Eve and I fell into this pool together. We were almost eaten by the big monster in the water. Senior is so pitiful. Elena threw herself into Feng Wu's arms as soon as she saw her. She hugged the Feng Wu girl and cried about her unhappy experience. Chapter 142. Senior Arguros said that Senior Sister is a tough girl and won't be defeated like this. Xiao Wu believes Senior Sister. Team Feng Wu really said that Arguros used Elena's strength as a story to tell to Feng Wu girl. Feng Wu girl naturally imagined Elena as a super tough girl with heaven-defying strength, although she didn't know what a tough girl meant. Elena, who didn't know anything about all this, only now knew that her image had been ruined by her useless teammates. Elena now bore a grudge against Argyros, and the villain in her heart was baring fangs and brandishing claws, wanting to beat the bastard named Argyros into a pig's head. Argyros, you bastard, wait until I meet you, I'll let you know why the flowers are so red. Argyros, who was far away in another small world, sneezed fiercely. Strange, why did it suddenly become so cold? Xiao Wu, don't listen to that kid's nonsense. Your senior sister is a lady. How can I be a tough girl? In front of Feng Wu, Elena would never admit that she was a tough girl. Feng Wu looked up doubtfully, not knowing who to believe. Who's this kid? Why is he walking with Xiao Wu? Elena just noticed that there was a young man standing beside Feng Wu. Looking at his dazed look, one could tell that he was a big dumb guy. Drew, who didn't know that he was labeled as a big dumb guy, was smiling at Elena in a friendly manner. Although he didn't know who this woman was, seeing that she had a good relationship with Feng Wu, he should curry favor with her. Nice to meet you, ladies. I'm Drew. Xiao Wu is my savior. Then, Drew told them everything that had happened to him. Elena listened with a smile, while Eve didn't care. She was a noble lady, and a poor swordsman living in the lower class was from a different world from her. Naturally, Eve wouldn't have any sympathy for people from different worlds. I see. Next time you see those guys who abandoned you, you should rush up and let them know why the flowers are so red. Elena said fiercely. As a tough girl, Elena hated those who abandoned their companions and ran for their lives. What they did was a lie, and it was a lie from the beginning. Elena had always hated that kind of person. So stupid to be deceived like this. Eve said disdainfully. Drew didn't get angry. He scratched his head embarrassedly. He wasn't smart to begin with, and his father often called him stupid. He was already used to people calling him that. We haven't introduced ourselves yet. I'm Elena, Xiao Wu's senior. This is Eve, who's in the same class as Feng Wu. We're all students of Notre Dame du Starlight. Elena frowned inwardly. As a well-educated noble, Elena wasn't used to Eve's style. It was as if she was more noble than everyone else. Eve's behavior made Elena, who was always carefree, a little unhappy. Fortunately, after returning to the academy, she wouldn't have many chances to cross paths with Eve. You're all students of Notre Dame du Starlight? That's amazing. I've tried to take the Notre Dame du Starlight before, but the acceptance rate was too low. My aptitude wasn't too good, so I didn't pass. When he heard that the three of them were the top students of the continent's #1 academy, he admired them even more. Drew wasn't someone who liked to be jealous of others. When others did something he couldn't, he would only admire them and work harder. He would never spend his time being jealous of others. Feng Wu probably saw through Drew's character, so she tacitly allowed him to stay by her side. Otherwise, she could have left after Drew woke up and asked for the information she wanted. Drew was a simple and honest person. When Elena saw that there wasn't any jealousy in his eyes after hearing about their identities, and that she herself had failed the Notre Dame du Starlight, only admiration and envy, she began to have a good impression of Drew and Elena. Senior Elena, why are there so many people gathered here? Feng Wu asked Elena, puzzled. She didn't understand. This was the entrance to the second level, so why were these people just standing here and chatting? They're waiting for someone to make the first move. The entrance to the second level is at the bottom of the pool, but there's a very powerful water magic beast guarding it. Unless all of us join forces, it's really impossible to fight that water magic beast. Even if we join forces, many people will die in this level, so no one wants to be the first to make the first move. Under normal circumstances, the first to make the first move will attract a lot of hatred. Elena said with a frown. She also didn't want to make the first move. If they didn't work together, they would die. It was better to observe the situation first. Oh. Feng Wu nodded, somewhat understanding. Everyone, quiet down. We're currently trapped in this level, so we have to work together to get out. There's no point in waiting any longer. Why don't we attack together now, defeat that water magic beast, and leave this level together. A middle-aged man wearing a red cloak and holding a long sword stood elegantly on a large rock, looking down from above. "Isn't this Sir Ander, the captain of the 4th squad of the werewolf mercenaries? As expected of a great swordsman. Just standing there gives off such an imposing aura. Isn't that right? I've been training hard for more than 20 years, but I'm still only an intermediate swordsman. This is great. With Sir Ander taking charge of the situation, we'll definitely be able to get out of this damned place." There were about 100 people gathered here. Unfortunately, because no one was willing to take charge, the hearts of the people weren't too united. Now, there was someone who was willing to take charge of the situation, and it was a powerful great swordsman at that. Naturally, no one would object. Although the two-realm battlefield was a famous danger zone, it was no longer suitable for great swordsmen and above. Therefore, very few great swordsmen and above would come here. Even if such an expert came, they would definitely bring their juniors here to level up. Because of the above reasons, so many people approved of Ander's appearance. They were even very happy that he stepped forward. Although it was Ander who took charge of the situation in the end, it didn't mean that he was the only great swordsman here. There were over 100 people gathered here, so how could Ander be the only great swordsman? It was only because those people either came from small clans or were lone wolves. They didn't have as much background as Ander. With Ander's appearance, everyone was gathered. Swordmasters attacked at close range, magicians attacked from afar, and light magicians and wood magicians were responsible for healing the injured. Chapter 143. Wood and light magic both had healing properties, but there weren't many wood mages, and even fewer light mages. Fortunately, there were a few wood mages and 2 light mages among the 100 or so people. This was a pleasant surprise. After arranging their positions, the mages began to attack the water surface, hoping to lure the water magic beast out. After a series of magic attacks, a huge python-like magic beast emerged from the water as expected. The powerful pressure and the stinky breath of the magic beast made the people in the dark feel slightly uncomfortable. When Feng Wu saw the magic beast emerge from the water, she immediately pulled up the information about this magic beast in her mind. This was a powerful water magic beast, the black water python. The black water python liked to live in cold water. Its attacks were of the water attribute, but the water it used to attack was black. Although it wasn't poisonous, it was recognized as the coldest water in the world. Those who were hit by the black water python's water attack would feel their bodies become incomparably cold, as if they were in hell. If the person hit by the black water was a man, then he could rely on the yang fire in his body to hold on for a while. As long as he found a place of extreme yang, he could rely on the yang energy in his body to dispel the cold air of the black water. But if the person hit by the black water was a woman, then the woman's body would be of the yin attribute without any yang energy to resist. If she was hit by the extremely cold black water, then she would immediately be frozen into ice and die. This battle was too unfavorable for the women. Clearly, Feng Wu wasn't the only one familiar with the black water python's characteristics. When Ando was drafting the battle plan, he had warned the female adventurers to be careful not to be hit by the black water attack. If they were unlucky enough to be hit by the black water, then no one would be able to save them. Most of the female adventurers who came out on an adventure were not delicate. Although they were worried about their own safety, they calmly accepted it and said that they would be careful. Some of the young ladies who had been doted on by their families were very uneasy. They didn't want to die, and after knowing the characteristics of the black water python, they were even more afraid of death. They had already lost the courage to fight, and only wanted to stay as far away as possible. Eve was one of these people. She didn't want to fight anymore. Why should she go when there were so many people attacking? She didn't want to go, it was too dangerous. If she was frozen by the black water, no one would be able to save her. Elena was a tough girl, and her strength was ranked in the top 10 of the 5th grade. Naturally, she wasn't afraid of the black water python's challenge. As for Feng Wu, she didn't plan to make a move. In Feng Wu's heart, little animals were all cute, and she couldn't lay her hands on cute little animals. Although the snake was a little big, Feng Wu still couldn't take it lightly. The black water python seemed to have noticed Feng Wu as well. Its large vertical pupils looked in the direction of Feng Wu. As there were many people in that direction, no one knew who the black water python was looking at. When Feng Wu saw the black water python looking over, a faint smile suddenly appeared on her stoic face, and she nodded at it in a friendly manner. The black water python narrowed its eyes, seeming to be in a good mood. It seemed this black water python still had good intentions towards Feng Wu. Feng Wu had a dense aura of nature, so she was very popular with magical beasts. Normal magical beasts would like Feng Wu as long as they weren't so cruel that they couldn't be saved. It's looking over, it must want to attack us. Everyone, hurry up and attack, what are you waiting for? A young swordmaster clearly couldn't stand the black water python's gaze. That gaze was too frightening. He seemed to feel that it was in a good mood. What the hell, why did he have this feeling? Could it be that this magical beast was in a good mood because they had so much food delivered to its door? This guy was clearly overthinking things. He was so scared that he almost peed his pants at the thought of his brain being eaten by a black water python. There were many people who thought this way. In an instant, magic attacks were launched towards the black water python. Because the swordmasters were melee fighters, they had no choice but to get close to the black water python to attack. Fortunately, Ando took the lead. He was the first to rush towards the black water python. Seeing that Ando had already attacked, the others naturally followed suit. Other than a few female swordmasters who were timid and didn't dare to attack, the other males all rushed forward aggressively like a swarm of bees. Feng Wu stood there without moving. Elena and Drew had already rushed forward to join the attack team. As there were still a few female swordmasters who didn't go forward like Feng Wu, no one paid special attention to Feng Wu. The most important thing was that Feng Wu was too young. At this age, she was at most a beginner swordmaster, and she wouldn't exceed level 5. Letting a beginner swordmaster who wasn't even level 5 attack a high-level magical beast, the black water python, wasn't that sending her to her death? This black water python was a high-level magical beast from birth, and it was unknown how many years it had cultivated in this space. Its strength had probably already reached level 30, and it was impossible for it to be lower than level 30. Such an opponent, and a magical beast with thick skin and thick flesh, was really not easy to defeat. By the side of the pool, there were flashes of swords and flashes of light. Magic spells were flying all over the sky. The swordmasters had to be careful. They were afraid that if they were not careful, those flying magic light balls would hit them. If that happened, they would not be able to rest in peace. The black water python stood motionless in the water, letting the little bug in front of it attack at will. After a while, perhaps because it was impatient, its vertical eyes narrowed, and its smelly mouth spat out a large amount of black water. The moment the black water came out, a strong cold air suddenly appeared, causing people to shiver. The black water is here. Everyone be careful. Ando shouted, reminding the others to be careful as he retreated in a direction, his movements as fast as a bird. When humans were at the boundary of life and death, they could often explode with powerful potential. No one didn't know the terror of the black water. When the black water came out, everyone put down their attacks and chose to run for their lives. Even Elena and Drew retreated at the first moment. Xiao Wu, be careful. Don't let the black water touch your body. Eve too, be careful. Elena didn't turn her head, her eyes watching the black water python's every move. Feng Wu replied, although she didn't think that the black water python would attack her. Eve, on the other hand, nodded desperately with tears in her eyes. It was obvious that she was scared by the black water and was about to cry. Because Eve was a magician, she naturally stood with the other magicians to attack from a distance. Eve's strength wasn't strong, and she was only level 5 at most. In a magician's team, weak magicians were like weak swordmasters. They were all sent to the first team to be cannon fodder. Chapter 144. It wasn't that Eve didn't want to retreat to the back, but the people behind her were all beginner magicians. She couldn't afford to offend them. She could only stand in the front row with tears in her eyes, afraid that the black water would fly towards her. Magicians, use your magic. Hurry up and attack. After the attack of the black water, the swordmasters shouted and urged the magicians to speed up their attacks. They wanted to attack the black water serpent in close combat, but the black water serpent didn't want to give them the chance. The black water serpent suddenly jumped out of the water and hit the magicians who were attacking it with its long body with a strong airflow. Magicians were not like swordmasters. They were all fragile. With this attack, the magicians standing in the front row were in danger. The magicians standing in the second row managed to escape, but the magicians standing in the first row were sent flying by this attack. They all vomited blood, and their faces were as pale as paper. Some of them even stopped breathing after this attack. However, in such a critical situation, no one had the time to pay attention to how many people had died under the python's attacks. The most important thing now was to defeat the black water python. They had to leave this place as soon as possible to reach the second stage. Only then would they be able to survive. Eve thought she was dead for sure. She only had time to scream before she was sent flying. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't sent flying. She was saved by someone, and it was Fengwu. Fengwu used her qing gong to lift Eve to the other side. Only then did she avoid the fate of being sent flying. Elena also wanted to save Eve, but the black water python was too fast. By the time she reacted, she only had time to escape. Elena sighed in relief when she saw Fengwu save Eve. Although Eve's personality wasn't very likable, she was still her junior. She naturally didn't want to see her junior die in front of her. Eve was saved. Before she could react, she had already been placed on the ground. As soon as her feet touched the grass, her legs gave way and she sat on the ground. Her skirt was wet with yellow liquid, and there was a faint smell of urine in the air. She was so scared that she peed. Fengwu wrinkled her small nose when she smelled the smell. She's already so old and she's still peeing? Fengwu remembered that when she went down the mountain with her master, she also smelled the same urine on an old man. Her master said that it was because he was old and sick, so he couldn't control his body. Eve was still so young. Was she sick too? Fengwu tilted her head. She didn't understand. Eve also realized that she was a virgin. Her whole face turned red with embarrassment. She should be glad that everyone was busy attacking the black python and no one was paying attention to her. Otherwise, she would have lost a lot of face. Mage's clothes were all enchanted with cleansing spells, and Eve's clothes were no exception. The urine on her pants and skirt was quickly cleaned up by the cleansing spells on her clothes. Elena noticed something strange when she came over to help Eve up. However, she didn't say anything for the sake of the girl's dignity. Instead, she told Drew not to come over and help the swordmasters attack to save some face for Eve. After Eve's body was cleaned, she told Eve to be careful. Elena joined the attack team again. Don't worry. Drink some medicine if you're sick. You'll be fine soon. Fengwu girl still thought that Eve was sick and couldn't control her body's reaction. She never thought that there was such a thing as peeing in fear in this world. Eve's face turned purple. She looked at Fengwu with hatred in her eyes. She wanted nothing more than to kill the girl in front of her. Eve didn't think that Fengwu was really comforting her. She only thought that Fengwu was mocking her. Senior Elena and the others said that Fengwu was pure and kind. That was a lie. How could a pure and kind person mock someone when they were in such a sorry state? Sure enough, other than Zicheng, there weren't any good people in this world. They were all hypocrites. She didn't even remember that her life was saved by Fengwu. Hatred had already covered her heart and eyes. She only had one thought now, and that was to kill Fengwu. Otherwise, she would definitely tell everyone about how she peed in fear. She didn't want to become the laughingstock of the entire school. She definitely didn't want to. Don't be so smug, you hypocritical woman. Don't think that you can threaten me just because you know about this. Don't even think about it. After shouting, Eve turned around and ran back to the magician team. She didn't look at Fengwu again. Fengwu girl stood in place, blinking her eyes. What's going on? The battle was still going on. More and more people died. In the end, more and more people died. The entire pool was almost dyed red with human blood. The black python continued to fight with ease. It didn't seem like it was going to lose. This made the humans more and more anxious. If they couldn't beat the black python, would they have to stay in this place forever? They didn't want that. The black python attacked again. This time, the encirclement was even larger. Regardless of gender, their first reaction was to stop the attack in front of them and dodge as quickly as possible. Fengwu stood on the side again and watched the others fight. She couldn't possibly attack the black python that had no grudge with her. Moreover, the black python clearly had a good impression of her. It avoided her several attacks. Naturally, Fengwu couldn't attack the black python when it was intentionally going easy on her. The black python had already left the pool. Those who were quick-witted had already seen the way out. They couldn't beat it. The only thing they could do now was to escape while others were drawing aggro. More than one person had this thought. When the black python attacked, most people were busy dodging. However, there was a small group of people who saw the hope of escaping. They directly rushed towards the pool and jumped into the water with a splash. They swam towards the only exit. The first group to jump into the water was the leader of the fourth team of the werewolf mercenaries, Ando, and the mercenaries he led. There were only 5 people in total. The werewolf mercenaries didn't all enter the same door. Instead, they split into a few small groups and entered different doors. Ando didn't want to give up even a little bit of hope. Who knew which door the so-called inheritance was behind? This way, the chances of success were naturally higher. However, Ando didn't expect that it would be the same no matter which door they entered. This was only the first round of elimination. After the werewolf mercenaries had all disappeared into the pool, the remaining people finally reacted. Bastards, those werewolf mercenaries are indeed bad people. They actually used us to draw the black python's attention while they escaped. A swordsman who had just dodged the black python's attack raised his sword and cursed. Chapter 145. I knew those big mercenary groups couldn't be trusted. These bastards, I hope they die in the second trial. Those still fighting the black water python were furious. They'd agreed to leave together after killing the black water python, but in the end, they'd all been killed as cannon fodder. Those who'd been left behind were furious and wanted to spit out 3 liters of blood. Ando had played a good hand this time. No one would have thought that a leader of a big mercenary group like him would go back on his word and run away with his own people, not caring about their lives at all. Everyone was furious, but there was nothing they could do about Ando. He'd already run out of the first trial, and unless they could chase him to the second trial to settle the score, they could only curse him in their hearts. Many people were cursing Ando, but Ando's actions made them understand one thing. Killing the black water python wasn't the only way to get to the second level. Guan Jian had to get close to the entrance of the second level. More and more people tried to enter the water in the following battles, and there were a few who were lucky enough to pass. However, the black water python wasn't a stupid beast. It immediately wanted to return to the pool and block the exit when it realized what the humans were trying to do. How could the adventurers let the black water python, which was finally willing to move its nest, go back to block the entrance? Regardless of whether it was a mage or a swordmaster, they all launched their strongest attacks together. No matter what, they couldn't let that damned black water python return to the pool. The black water python looked disdainfully at the humans who'd overestimated themselves. If it hadn't been for its carelessness, did they really think they'd be able to pass through its territory so easily? They were thinking too much. Go, kill this monster. If we don't kill it, we won't be able to leave this place. Someone shouted. At this moment, everyone didn't care who was shouting. They all used their magic and sword skills to attack the black serpent with murderous intent. They only hoped that this damned magic beast would die soon so that they could pass the trial. Elena immediately retreated to Fengwu and Eve's side after dodging an attack from the black water. She said softly, "We'll leave from the bottom of the pool when there's an opportunity. This black water python is too strong, and it's impossible for us to kill it with our strength." Elena was certainly a very experienced senior. She'd long since seen that this black water python wasn't an ordinary character. It was too difficult to kill it, and could even be said to be an impossible mission. Unless an even stronger existence made a move, they'd be nothing more than fodder. If it wasn't for the fact that the black water python didn't have such a strong desire to kill them, they would have died long ago. With the black water python's strength, it wasn't impossible for it to kill everyone. It's just a matter of whether it's willing to do so. At a time like this, if he didn't find a chance to leave, would he really kill the black python with these people and then leave? Dream on. Drew had also retreated to Feng Wu's side and happened to hear Elena's words. He agreed with Elena's idea that they had to find an opportunity to escape from the bottom of the pool. Otherwise, they'd really be trapped here. Of course, Elena wasn't the only one who'd seen this point. Anyone with half a brain could see it. They all had the same idea as Elena, and wanted to find an opportunity to escape. When the black water finished its attack, quite a few people were hit by it because they couldn't dodge in time. The men were better off, almost freezing into ice, but the women were unlucky. They were directly frozen into popsicles. Go! At Elena's command, Feng Wu and Drew immediately gave chase. Although Eve was very scared, she grit her teeth and charged towards the black water python with Elena in order to leave. The sound of weapons hitting the black water python's body and the sound of magic activating resounded through the air. The air was filled with dense magical energy, and the battle was getting more and more intense. Elena led Feng Wu and the others to kill their way out, but they didn't expect the black water python to ignore them. Although Elena was surprised, it was better to ignore them completely. It was better to ignore them completely, and not suddenly think of them in the middle of the battle. Elena and the others were ignored, but the others were naturally the focus. Black water attacks, wild dance of the snakes, they were all skills that were used with all their might. In a short time, more and more people were injured and fell to the ground. Screams and cries of pain rang out, but they didn't even leave a small mark on the black water python's body. What a huge irony and failure this was. When they passed by the black water python, Elena and the others were nervous. They were afraid that the monster would suddenly think of them. At such a close distance, there was no place to hide. Fortunately, the black water python didn't seem to be interested in them at all. It was attacking the others with all its might, and didn't even look at Feng Wu and the others. In fact, the black water python was intentionally going easy on them. After all, it had a good impression of the Feng Wu girl. Originally, it only wanted to let the Feng Wu girl leave alone, but it didn't expect that there would be a few hateful ants by her side. However, the black water python didn't care about these little bugs. After all, there were so many fun bugs for it to play with. Elena was the first to pass by the black water python. She turned around to tell Feng Wu and the others to hurry over. Unexpectedly, the black water python turned its head to look at Feng Wu and the others. This glance scared Elena half to death. She was afraid that the black water python would suddenly attack. At the same time, Eve and Drew were also shocked. Drew was still fine. He had a long sword in his hand and was ready to fight the black python himself. Then, he told the two girls to leave as soon as possible. They were only a few steps away from the pool. They couldn't give up now. Feng Wu was the calmest. She knew that the black water python wouldn't hurt them. She could feel the kindness coming from the black water python. Unfortunately, other than Feng Wu, no one else could see this. Eve was standing a step away from Feng Wu. The black water python was not far from Feng Wu, and Feng Wu was standing right in front of the black water python. Many scenes suddenly flashed through Eve's mind. During the entrance exam, because of Feng Wu, the other examinees hated her. Feng Wu also saw her in her worst state. If she pushed Feng Wu out now, then she wouldn't have to be afraid anymore. She wouldn't have to be afraid that Feng Wu would tell others what she saw. No one would target her because of Feng Wu. As long as there was no Feng Wu, as long as there was no Feng Wu, as long as there was no Feng Wu, as long as there was no Feng Wu. The voice seemed to have a demonic power. She couldn't control herself at all. Soon, a trace of hatred and determination flashed through Eve's eyes. Chapter 146. No one expected Eve to attack Fengwu. Although Drew could tell that the atmosphere between the two girls wasn't good, she didn't expect Eve to want to kill Fengwu. On the other hand, Elena didn't expect Eve to be so daring. Notre Dame du Starlight students were forbidden from killing each other. This was something the teachers taught the freshmen on the first day of school. She refused to believe that Eve didn't know this, but she still did it. She really did it right in front of them. Standing behind Fengwu, Eve suddenly pushed Fengwu's back with her pure white hands. Then, she ran for her life in the direction of the pool. She didn't see what would happen to Fengwu after she pounced on the black python. In her opinion, death was certain. Drew was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. By the time he wanted to save Fengwu, it was already too late. He could only watch as Fengwu's body fell onto the black python's body. Instead of running for his life, Drew ran for his life toward the black python, hoping to use his strength to block its attack on Fengwu and save Fengwu's life. Eve looked at the pool that was just a step away from her and smiled. She was about to succeed. She was about to escape. Could she really escape? Reality told us that she was overthinking things. Just as Eve passed by Elena and was about to dive into the pool, a long snake tail suddenly wrapped around her and sprayed her with black water. Eve didn't even have time to cry for help before she was turned into a human-shaped ice cube. The black python clearly had no interest in Eve. With a swing of its tail, it threw Eve's frozen body to the ground. Thankfully, the black water was hard enough that it didn't shatter into pieces. When Elena saw how Eve had hurt her classmates behind her back, she was so angry that she wanted to get rid of her for the sake of the academy. She didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, Eve had already received her retribution. This retribution came too quickly and caught everyone off guard. On the other hand, the Blackwater python had turned its head to attack Fengwu. Fengwu was naturally fine. In her opinion, she was only pushed by Eve and almost fell. It wasn't a big deal. That's right, Fengwu didn't fall on the black python as Eve thought. Instead, she flipped forward and stood up. Drew then ran over. Drew was also worried that his savior would be killed, but he found that the black python didn't care about them at all. Instead, it chased after Eve, who had already escaped. Although Drew felt that it was a little strange, he just treated it as that Eve was too vicious. She was so vicious that even a magical beast couldn't stand by and wanted to kill her. There were many people who saw the black python freeze Eve, but they didn't know why it did so. After all, it happened too suddenly. Other than Elena, who had been watching Fengwu and the others, no one would be bored enough to watch these little fellows. After the black python froze Eve, it attacked the others, ignoring Elena and the others once more. Elena was also puzzled as to why the black python was so uninterested in them. The only one who was attacked was Eve, who killed herself. But now wasn't the time to think about this. Her curiosity and surprise only lasted for a few seconds before Elena quickly grabbed the frozen Eve and put her into her space ring. Then, she jumped into the pool with Fengwu and Drew, who had already run over. After jumping into the pool, they didn't notice the group of people on the shore. Seeing that someone was about to escape, they were so envious that they almost vomited blood. Their attacks became even more frenzied. Damn it! Why couldn't they get out after fighting so hard for so long? Why were there so many bitches who escaped in the chaos? This wasn't fair. Those who were left behind almost turned into roaring horses and charged at the black python. Fengwu and the others, who had already jumped into the pool, felt a chill seeping into their bodies as soon as they entered the water. The temperature in the pool was so low that it was probably a few degrees below zero. With such cold water, it was no wonder that the black python, which had always lived here, could spit out cold water to attack. The three of them used their fighting aura to block the cold water. Without the black python chasing after them, they quickly reached the bottom of the pool. There was indeed a small black hole at the bottom of the pool that could allow two people to pass through. The three of them entered the hole one after another and rushed to the next level. Fengwu was still thinking when she entered the hole. She hadn't said goodbye to the black python yet. She didn't know if she would see it again in the future. The young girl's mood was a little down. She had seen how the black python had helped her take revenge. Fengwu was a little touched by the black python's protection. It was indeed a pity that she couldn't say goodbye to the friend she had just made. After swimming out of the hole, they actually entered a large hall. There was nothing in the hall except for a few people who were either standing or sitting in the hall, resting with their eyes closed. They didn't even see anyone talking. This group of people who had entered the hall before Fengwu and the others saw that there were new people coming in. They just raised their eyes and didn't say anything. They continued to do what they were doing, wiping their swords or meditating. No one gave them a second glance. The three of their clothes were originally wet from the pool water, but after coming out of the hole, their clothes were actually dry. There wasn't even a single water stain left on them. "Xiao Wu, over here." A Zhe's voice suddenly rang out. Fengwu's eyes lit up when she heard the voice. Only then did she realize that a Zhe had already arrived in the hall. Sitting next to a Zhe were Skycliff and Ming Shi, as well as Zicheng and Irene. The others were nowhere to be seen. Elena and the others walked over to a Zhe, who was waving at them. Fengwu was very happy to see a Zhe. There was even a trace of a smile on her stoic face. "Xiao Wu, are you okay?" As soon as a Zhe saw Fengwu, he took the girl's little hand and pulled her to sit next to him. Next to a Zhe was Ming Shi. When Fengwu sat down, she even glanced at Ming Shi, her eyes sparkling. "I'm fine. I made a lot of new friends on the grassland. It was very fun. They gave me gifts. This is Drew. He's also a friend." Fengwu was talking about the large group of animal friends she made on the grassland. Finally, she mentioned Drew. Fengwu felt that Drew was a good person, so she also treated Drew as a friend. When she was pushed out by Eve, Drew didn't run away by himself. Instead, he ran towards her to save her. Although it was later proven that there wasn't any danger, Fengwu felt Drew's concern for her. "Hello, I'm Drew. Fengwu is my savior." Drew scratched his head. He suddenly felt that Fengwu's friends had a very strong aura. There was the blonde youth, the silver-haired youth, and the red-haired youth who was talking to Xiao Wu. Chapter 147. The three of them gave him a very strong feeling. The red-haired boy was like a ball of fire. Just by standing next to him, he could feel the fire element fluctuations coming from Xiao Yu. The silver-haired boy was as cold as ice. His eyes could freeze people into popsicles. The golden-haired youth. How should he put it? He was clearly smiling, and his smile was so gentle. Furthermore, he was so good-looking. He was simply the most good-looking youth he had ever seen since he was born. Even those young girls who thought they were beautiful could not compare to his appearance. The strange thing was that he was supposed to be a boy as gentle as the moonlight. Why did he feel a strong sense of danger when he looked at him? Drew couldn't figure it out, but he believed in his intuition. This boy was definitely very strong, and he wasn't someone to be trifled with. It had to be said that Drew's intuition was very accurate. If Elena knew what he was thinking, she would definitely pat him on the shoulder and praise him for his good eyesight. Even these friends of his only discovered that Ming Shi was a hypocrite after interacting with him. They didn't expect Drew to discover it the first time they met. "Hello, I'm Ming Shi. I'm Fengwu's senior. Please sit." Ming Shi looked at Drew with a smile. At first glance, he found that Drew was a very simple and honest boy. Therefore, he didn't object to Drew sitting with them. Drew obediently found a place to sit. He wanted to sit next to Fengwu, but unfortunately, there was no place next to Fengwu. Ming Shi sat on her left, and a Zhe sat on her right. Drew's idea of sitting next to Fengwu was doomed to fail. "Were you teleported to the grassland?" "You were much luckier than me. I was teleported to a swamp, and I almost couldn't see you again." A Zhe thought of the disgusting underground creatures in the swamp. He even vomited the food he ate yesterday. If it weren't for those disgusting things that made his universe explode, he wouldn't have been able to get out of that damn small world so quickly. "Ming Shi, Skycliff, where have you been teleported to?" Elena sat between Zicheng and Irene, and asked Skycliff and Ming Shi curiously. "I was transported to the mouth of a volcano." Ming-Shi smiled bitterly. He didn't know if his luck was good or bad, but he was actually teleported to such a place. I was teleported to an ice field. Skycliff said faintly. Ice plains? Your luck is too good. If you go to the ice field, you'll be like a fish back in water. Who would be your opponent? Elena secretly cursed the heavens for being so unfair. Ming-Shi was fine, but Skycliff was simply cheating. Letting a person who had comprehended the ice sword intent go to the ice field was like letting a fish go to the sea. This was cheating. At this time, Elena still didn't know that the girl who had been going through the grassland with her also cheated. Fortunately, she didn't know, otherwise who knew what kind of trouble she would cause. Skycliff raised his eyebrows, and didn't comment. Senior Elena, were you and Fengwu sent to the grassland together? Irene asked. Yes, but it wasn't the same place. Elena said. Senior Elena, did you see Eve and Rika? Zicheng was a bit worried about her two friends, especially Eve. It wasn't easy for Eve's favorability to rise to 100. She really didn't want anything to happen to Eve. When Elena heard the name Eve, her face stiffened. She originally planned to leave here and tell the others about the situation, but it seemed like there was no chance. Eve was fighting the last magical beast and was hit by the black water python. Her entire body was frozen, so I could only put her in my spatial ring. I'll think of a way to save her after we get out. If it was said that Elena didn't like Eve in the past, she now hated her very much. What right did a person who would harm her own classmates and teammates have to be liked by others? Seeing Zicheng so concerned about Eve, she really wanted to tell her what Eve did to Fengwu, but this wasn't the place to talk. There were still many people around that she didn't know. Elena didn't know that from the moment she appeared, huge waves had been set off in Irene's heart. According to the original plot, Elena shouldn't have survived to the second stage because she would be frozen by the black water python in the first stage to save Eve. Her body would forever remain in the tomb of the gods. But now, Elena was alive and well, but Eve, who shouldn't have been in trouble, was in trouble. In the original plot, Elena died in the first stage. In Ming-Shi's team, only Elena, Zicheng, and Eve had entered the tomb of the gods together. The others didn't know about the tomb of the gods at all. When Zicheng took Eve out with the inheritance, he only told Ming-Shi and the others that the two of them fell into an ancient tomb with Elena. In the end, Elena was killed by a black water python in order to protect Eve. Although the people of Ming-Shi team didn't say anything at that time, they didn't team up with Zicheng and the others after returning to school. In Zicheng's life as the female lead, the people of Ming-Shi team were very few people who weren't attracted by the female lead's halo. From the original plot, it could be seen that Ming-Shi and the others were not without doubts about Elena's death. Unfortunately, they didn't have any evidence. Zicheng also proved that Elena really died to protect her junior. Even if they wanted to find trouble with Zicheng and the others, they couldn't find a reason to. Now, the ending was reversed. However, she didn't know whether the ending changed because so many people who didn't appear in the original plot had come or because Fengwu was among the people who were transported to the same place as Elena and the others. Irene used to suspect that Fengwu was also a member of the Transmigration Army. However, after this period of time, she was very sure that Fengwu was definitely not a transmigrator. Girls who transmigrated wouldn't be as dumb as her, nor would they be so simple. Irene now completely didn't think about it. Did transmigrators have to come from Earth? Couldn't they come from another world? Irene now completely walked into a misunderstanding that she didn't even realize. Senior Elena, please take out Eve's body for me to take a look. Maybe I can save her. When Zicheng heard that Eve was injured so badly that her whole body was frozen, he couldn't remain calm and said somewhat anxiously. Elena sighed. With a wave of her hand, a frozen human-shaped object appeared on the ground. When the people on the side saw Elena's actions, they only took a glance and then looked away. A woman who was frozen by the black water python, they had never heard of anyone who could come back to life. Chapter 148. Zicheng looked at Eve, whose expression was still frozen at the very last moment. Her eyes reddened. Although Eve had 1,000 faults, and her personality wasn't likable, it was undeniable that she treated Zicheng wholeheartedly. Eve, who was frozen by the black water, had her expression frozen at the last moment. From her eyes, one could see a trace of hatred, a trace of pride, and a trace of joy. Others might not understand the meaning behind those eyes, but Elena and Drew did. Her venom was because of Fengwu, her pride was because she'd schemed against Fengwu, and her joy was because she'd seen hope of escaping the previous trial. Only, Eve never would have thought that not only had she failed to scheme against Fengwu, she'd even landed herself in such a state. Zicheng, look on the bright side. The black water in this black python's body is the most water in the world. As long as it's a woman, she'll immediately be frozen into a block of ice. It's impossible to save Eve. Elena couldn't bear to see Zicheng so sad. No, I can save her. I want to try. Zicheng looked at the frozen Eve with a serious expression. All right then. Don't force yourself if you can't. You've tried your best. Elena patted her shoulder and couldn't bear to see her like this. From Elena's point of view, this was completely useless. Everyone knew how dangerous the black water was. None of the women who'd been hit by the black water had ever been able to come out of the ice. This wasn't just any ordinary block of ice. This was the most water in the world. When it came into contact with the energy in a woman's body, it wouldn't be that easy to break free. Irene wasn't the only one who thought this way. Ming Shi and the others didn't think much of it either. Irene was the only one who knew how powerful the female lead's cheat was. She wasn't completely unconfident in the female lead. The female lead's favorability system wasn't just for show. It was mentioned in the novel that this system was very powerful. It could be exchanged for many good things that the strong people on this continent were jealous of. Even treasures like godhoods could be exchanged through the favorability system. At the end of the novel, didn't the female lead fuse with a divinity without any attributes and become a god? The male lead also obtained a divinity and became a god with the female lead. They ascended to the god realm and were free and unfettered. Now that the female lead said she wanted to save Zicheng, others might think it was a fantasy, but Irene believed that as long as the female lead wanted to, she might be able to do it. The female lead really was the female lead. A purple flame suddenly lit up in the female lead's hand. This flame was only a small flame, but it gave people a sense of apocalyptic crisis. No matter how you looked at it, that strange purple flame wasn't simple. That's the extreme purple sun flame, ranked 5th on the heavenly flame list. Someone exclaimed when they saw Zicheng release the purple flame. Everyone who heard this exclamation looked at the heavenly flame in Zicheng's hand with envy. There were a total of 10 heavenly flames on the heavenly flame list, and the extreme purple sun flame was ranked 5th. It was a pure yang attribute flame. This extreme purple sun flame could not only be used to fight enemies, but also to refine medicine. It could also increase the success rate. In short, it was a flame that people yearned for even in their dreams. As an alchemist, there was no one who didn't want to have a heavenly flame. Even if they weren't alchemists, having a heavenly flame was equivalent to having an additional means of attack. The attack of a heavenly flame wasn't something that ordinary magic could compare to. It was equivalent to having a heavenly flame in one's hand. It was no wonder that the people on this continent were so eager to have a heavenly flame. However, great opportunities were often accompanied by great risks. The only way to subdue a heavenly flame was to fuse oneself with the heavenly flame. If the fusion failed, one would immediately be burned to ashes. If one succeeded, one would be able to subdue a heavenly flame. From then on, one's combat strength would be off the charts, and one would immediately enter the ranks of the top heavenly treasure experts. However, since ancient times, the number of people who had successfully subdued a heavenly flame could be counted on one's fingers. The most important thing was that heavenly flames were rare. There were only 10 types of heavenly flames in the world. Except for the first type that no one had ever seen, the other 9 types were scattered all over the world. However, all heavenly flames had spirituality. Even if one encountered them, if one tried to forcefully fuse with it without the approval of the heavenly flame, the probability of death was as high as 90%. Even if the fusion was successful, one's body would also suffer great damage. Now, there was a person who had successfully fused with a heavenly flame in front of them. Moreover, judging from her appearance, she had not been bitten by the heavenly flame. Moreover, this girl was so young. What an incredible thing this was! For a moment, gazes of jealousy, envy, and resentment began to revolve around Zicheng. Some people had a better mentality and let it go after envy. However, some people were narrow-minded and could not bear to see such a young girl obtain such a great opportunity. They already had the intention to kill Zicheng. People in this world were like this. If they could not become a genius, they would resent all the geniuses in the world. Many geniuses who did not have the time to grow up were ruined by others' jealousy and hatred. Fengwu looked at the small ball of purple flame and remembered that there seemed to be a ball of such flame at the back of Mount Yuehua. Her master said that it was a pure flame, the purest flame in the world. Anyone with impure thoughts would be burned by the pure flame, and the pure flame was the flame used to forge a pure sword. She remembered that in the end, the small ball of flame was absorbed into the body of Xiaochun's sword. Xiaochun and the small ball of flame fused together and became good friends. She remembered that when pure flame was still at the back of Mount Yuehua, she often went to see it. Although it was only a small ball of flame, it was lively and cute. It was very interesting. That small ball of flame was like those small animals, and they were all good friends. Just as Fengwu was thinking about pure flame, who had been staying in the body of the sword, seemed to feel something. It emerged from the body of Xiaochun's sword. A white, chubby little girl with wings adorably flew around the sword. The little girl's gaze passed through Fengwu's dantian and looked at a certain place in the hall. That was where the purple extreme sun flame was. The chubby little girl curled her lips in disdain and then flew back into the body of the sword. No one other than Fengwu, who was the owner of the sword, noticed this. The purple extreme sun flame, which had been very stable after being released by Zicheng, suddenly began to tremble when the chubby little girl appeared. It was almost unable to stand straight under the pressure of a superior. Fortunately, the pressure disappeared very quickly. The purple extreme sun flame, which had just gained sentience, heaved a sigh of relief. What kind of flame could have such a strong suppression on it? Could it be the second or third flame on the heavenly flame list? Don't blame it for not guessing the number one flame. The number one flame, they did not even know what it was called. How could they guess? The number one flame in the world had always been a legend among the heavenly flames. The heavenly flames knew of the existence of the number one flame, but no one knew what that flame was. Chapter 149. All the spiritual fires in the world had a special ability to sense each other. They might not know each other's location, but they could sense each other's existence. This was also why humans knew that there was a first heavenly fire that was more powerful than any other fire in the world. As the master of the purple heavenly sun fire, Zicheng was the only one who could sense the peculiarity of the purple heavenly sun fire. However, even though it had successfully merged with the purple heavenly sun fire, the purple heavenly sun fire's spiritual intelligence was still very weak. She couldn't sense any useful information. After the purple heavenly sun fire's power stabilized, Zicheng moved the heavenly fire in his hand closer to the frozen Eve. Eve's body actually melted into water under the power of the purple heavenly sun fire. Although the frozen Eve was successfully released, her breath was weak. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to survive. Because she was hit by the black water and sealed in ice for such a long time, Eve's meridians had long been damaged by the cold. Her muscles were as stiff as a corpse's. After the ice on Eve's body melted, Zicheng let out a sigh of relief. He took out a Longan-sized pill from his space ring and fed it to Eve. The pill didn't look small, but when it came close to Eve's lips, it melted into water and flowed into Eve's body. That pill was naturally something that Zicheng had exchanged from the system. It was called the resurrection pill. As long as one was still breathing, no matter how serious their injuries were, they would immediately return to their original state. Of course, taking this pill wasn't without side effects. Taking a single resurrection pill would cause one to lose 20 years of life. It was equivalent to trading the next 20 years of life for the current health. Of course, there were better medicines in Zi Cheng's space. It wasn't that she couldn't exchange for pills that didn't require her to sacrifice her lifespan, but the amount of favorable impression points required was too high. If she really wanted to exchange for a pill like that, then she would lose more than half of the favorable impression points she had accumulated with great difficulty. This was definitely not an outcome she wanted to see. Fortunately, this was a world of magic and swords. As long as one practiced magic well and made a breakthrough, one's lifespan would be extended. 20 years of lifespan was nothing. A pill that was exchanged for 20 years of lifespan was of course very effective. Eve's originally pale lips and pale complexion gradually regained its rosy color. Her originally pale complexion had already returned to its usual healthy complexion. Eve groaned as she slowly opened her eyes. Her last memory was that she had pushed Fengwu away. She should have been killed by the black python. But what happened to her? She clearly remembered that she had already reached the edge of the pool and was about to leave. Due to the black python's speed, Eve didn't even know how she was attacked before she was completely frozen. She couldn't figure out what had happened and thought that she was still on the grassland, beside the pond. Eve, it's great that you woke up. Zicheng happily helped Eve up from the ground. Eve only realized that something was wrong when she saw Zicheng. She opened her eyes wide and looked forward. Elena, Fengwu, Drew, and even Senior Ming, she were all there. What was going on? Did she really leave the first trial? But why didn't she feel anything? And Fengwu? She clearly remembered that she had pushed her towards the black python. There was no way she was still alive. She must be dreaming. She must be dreaming. Eve suddenly looked at Fengwu and shook her head violently. Then, she stretched out her hands and patted her head. From an outsider's point of view, she seemed to have suffered a huge blow. Fengwu was the person that Eve had focused her attention on as soon as she woke up, but she didn't feel anything. To her, Eve was an insignificant existence. It wasn't that Fengwu couldn't feel Eve's murderous intent. Fengwu wouldn't go easy on someone who wanted to kill her. It was just that Fengwu remembered that her new friend, the Black Python, had already avenged her. Although she was saved by Zicheng in the end, it was still her luck to be alive. Since her good friend had already avenged her, they were now even. Fengwu wasn't in the mood to bicker with Eve. Therefore, as long as Eve didn't court death herself, Fengwu wouldn't take the initiative to deal with her in the future. Unfortunately, Eve didn't know this. She naturally thought that everyone was the same as her. If someone dared to harm her, she would find a chance to get rid of that person. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to sleep or eat in peace. Eve, stop. Stop hitting. You just recovered, don't hurt yourself again. Zicheng's eyes widened in shock when he saw Eve continuously hitting her head. It took him a few seconds before he realized that he had to stop Eve from hurting herself again. Others didn't know why Eve was acting like this, but Elena and Drew did. She was afraid and in disbelief. She didn't believe that she didn't kill Fengwu and was afraid of Fengwu's revenge. She also hoped that she was dreaming. That way, she could at least lie to herself that she had killed Fengwu. Stop hitting. It's useless. I can tell you right now that you're not dreaming. Everything you see is real. Fengwu isn't dead, and we came out safely. Elena didn't have a good impression of Eve anymore. It would be strange if she liked someone who harmed her classmate behind her back. Elena was a swordmaster, and most swordmasters were straightforward. They were more open and aboveboard when dealing with people. She looked down on people who used sneak attacks. Others might not have felt the coldness in Elena's tone, but Ming Shi and Skycliffe, who had a good relationship with Elena and were regular team members, could hear the strangeness in her tone. What happened? Elena was usually very protective of her juniors. She was never stingy when she needed help. But now, she was so cold to the first-year Eve. It seemed that something had happened at the grassland checkpoint. Eve must have done something that Elena couldn't tolerate. Skycliffe and Ming Shi exchanged glances. Although they didn't say anything, they could guess what the other was thinking. A Jur sat to the side impatiently. He took out a pig trotter from his spatial ring and started chewing. He didn't care at all whether Eve was dead or alive. Compared to Ming Shi's group, the other factions in the hall were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. How was this possible? This was a woman who had been hit by the black water python's black water. How could she still be alive? Chapter 150. Was it because of that medicinal pill? It must be because of that medicinal pill. If he had only used the heavenly fire to save the person inside would not have survived. At most, they would only be struggling at death's door for a moment. However, after that woman took that magical medicinal pill, she immediately recovered and woke up. Anyone would be very emotional and interested in this kind of life-saving thing, especially after witnessing its effects with their own eyes. Some of the surrounding adventurers were above board, while some were secretly sizing up Eve and Zicheng. Especially, they paid more attention to Zicheng. For a woman who could casually take out such a magical medicinal pill, no one dared not to be interested in her. In the world of magic and swords, there were naturally medicines that could improve one's strength and heal injuries. However, in this continent, people were more familiar with potions. It was not that there were no medicinal pills, but the refining method of medicinal pills had always been in the hands of the ancient Eastern countries. Except for the black-haired and black-eyed Easterners, generally no one would learn how to refine medicinal pills. The most important thing was that even if they wanted to learn, the alchemists of the ancient Eastern countries would not easily pass it on. Refining medicinal pills was different from refining medicinal pills. As long as one wanted to become a pharmacist, one could go to the pharmacist department of the major academies to register. After entering the academy, one could also receive systematic training. On the continent, the refining method of many medicinal pills was not a secret. Many people knew about it. However, knowing about it did not mean that one could refine it. Don't look at how the pharmacist department did not accept people, but there were only a few who could really advance to the legendary pharmacist level or even higher. The inheritors of the alchemists of the ancient Eastern countries were more secretive. An alchemist usually would not accept too many disciples. Accepting 2 or 3 disciples was already considered a lot. Most alchemists would only accept 1 disciple in their lifetime. Therefore, the profession of alchemist was rarer than pharmacist. Many people would see a lot of medicinal pills in their lifetime, but it was possible that they would not see what medicinal pills looked like in their lifetime. Most of the medicinal pills that people knew were just hearsay. Now, in this Tomb of the Gods, they actually saw a young girl take out a legendary medicinal pill. It would be strange if they were not shocked to the point that their eyeballs almost fell out. F***ck. It turned out that the legend was true. He had long heard that the alchemy techniques of the ancient Eastern country were very mystical. He didn't expect to see it with his own eyes today. A person whose life was about to be cut off just by eating a pill, and his life force was immediately restored. This was simply too inconceivable. If it was a potion, it would have to be at least a legendary level potion to have such an effect. If that little girl could take out such a miraculous pill to save her companion, she should have a lot of it on her. If she only had one, they didn't believe that she would take it out to save someone. This kind of miraculous pill was not enough for herself. How could she take it out to save someone? Anyway, they won't believe it. Do you believe it? Ming Shi's group didn't seem to notice those covetous gazes and just sat there calmly. Ajur and Fengwu each took out delicious food and precious spiritual fruits. They generously took them out to share with everyone. Ming Shi took the spiritual fruit that Fengwu girl handed to him. He was very surprised. He knew that most of the spiritual fruit trees were controlled by magical beasts. As a human, unless you had powerful strength, it was impossible to snatch food from the mouths of magical beasts. However, the Fengwu girl did it. Although he didn't know how Fengwu did it, it didn't prevent him from looking at Fengwu in a new light. No matter what method Fengwu used, she successfully proved her strength. When Fengwu saw Ming Shi take the spiritual fruit she handed over, her expressionless face flushed with excitement. She looked extremely adorable. Ming Shi instantly felt that the girl in front of him was unexpectedly cute. He now somewhat understood why Elena always said that Fengwu was so adorable that it made people want to bury their heads in her chest. What was he thinking? After Ming she covered it up with a light cough, he immediately shifted his gaze away. He no longer looked at Fengwu's cute little face that could make people have nosebleeds. After 2 hours, people appeared in the hall from time to time. The siblings Tingfeng and Tingyu, Pei Qing, Arguros, and Ruglas, who hadn't appeared until now, also appeared in these 2 hours. Seeing them appear, everyone was finally relieved. At least no one in their temporary team died in this tomb of the god of sin. Because there was still some time before the 100 people who passed the test, the people who arrived in the hall sat in groups of 2s and 3s. There were also people who stood or sat alone against the pillars. In short, the hall was filled with chatter. It wasn't as quiet as Fengwu and the others had first seen. Most of the people who came later had heard from others that Zicheng had used a miraculous pill to save their friends. Most of them expressed their own ambitions for that mysterious pill. It seemed that Zicheng would become the target of most people in the second stage of the test. Who asked her to reveal her wealth? There were very few weaklings among the adventurers who could train in the two-realm battlefield. Every expert's hands were stained with the blood of others. Killing others and seizing their treasures was something that these adventurers didn't feel any pressure at all. The entire hall was filled with a surging undercurrent. Almost everyone's attention was focused on Zicheng. Although they wanted the inheritance, there was only one inheritance. Whether or not they could obtain it was still uncertain. However, everyone had seen the pill on Zicheng. If they could obtain it, wouldn't that be equivalent to having an extra life? Somewhere in the hall, in an inconspicuous corner, an old man who looked rather down and out sat alone in a corner of the hall. Beside the old man was a cute young girl who looked to be 15 or 16 years old. This young girl was delicate and cute, especially her pair of naturally seductive eyes. As long as she took a liking to any man, that man would definitely give her his heart. Although the young girl's body wasn't as developed as Elena's, she definitely surpassed most girls of her age. An old man and a beautiful young girl. This combination sat in a small corner without attracting anyone's attention. Grandpa, will there really be that thing here? The young girl knew that a soundproof barrier had been set up around the two of them. However, she still deliberately lowered her voice when she spoke. There's more than a 50% chance that there will be. The old man's eyes suddenly lit up. In that instant, he didn't look like an old man in his twilight years at all. Unfortunately, this light flashed and the old man returned to being an inconspicuous old man in everyone's eyes. No one noticed the slight change in the old man. Chapter 151. Just as everyone was waiting for the second test to arrive, when the last person entered the hall, the voice that had sounded in the first test appeared again. Heavenly God Korin's voice sounded again. Little fellows, congratulations on reaching the second stage. After passing this stage, you will be able to reach the final place where I, Korin, will inherit my legacy. There, one of you will receive my legacy. The number of people who can pass the last test is 10. Once the number is reached, the 10 people who pass the second test will be automatically teleported to the final place of inheritance. Good luck, adventurers. I will wait for you at the final place of inheritance. Don't make me wait too long. After saying these words, Kaven's voice gradually disappeared from the hall. At this time, a large door appeared in front of everyone. Everyone looked at each other. For a moment, no one approached the door that suddenly appeared. At this time, the door opened by itself. With a creak, the door that was almost as tall as the roof of the hall opened. Inside the door, a white light shone. No one knew what was inside the door. The white light hid everything inside the door. Some people didn't want to be the first to rush because they weren't sure if there was great danger ahead. They just wanted others to explore the way first. Some people thought that first come first win. They didn't want to fall behind others. After all, there were only 10 places. If they could pass the test first, then they would have a better chance of receiving the inheritance. There were quite a number of people who thought this way. The moment the door opened, most of the adventurers, whether they were swordmasters or magicians, started running as fast as they could. They all wanted to enter the door as soon as possible, shake off the crowd, and become one of the 10 people who passed in the end. Feng Wu and the others didn't go inside until most of the people had gone through the gate. Everyone was guessing what kind of world was behind the door, but they didn't think that they would see such a scene. After all 100 people entered the gate disappeared, and they arrived at a pitch-black cave. There were 5 passages in the cave, and no one knew where these 5 passages led to. Some of the passages seemed to be filled with red light, some made people feel cold, and some were pitch-black, to the point where they couldn't even see their own fingers. In short, each of the 5 passages looked different. There was a sign next to each passage. On it was written that each passage was limited to 20 people. In other words, the team of 100 people had to move separately. Those who entered earlier had already chosen the passage they wanted to take. Those who were slow could only choose the ones left behind by others. Although the sun and moon couldn't be seen in the cave, there were rows of luminous pearls inlaid on the walls. These luminous pearls weren't great treasures. They were only used for illumination. However, because they could emit light at night and were exceptionally beautiful at night, they were very popular with noble ladies. Therefore, the price had always been very high. Now, in such a cave, there were rows of luminous pearls. Should it be said that this was God's graveyard? If it weren't for God's inheritance in front of them, the luminous pearls on the walls might have been dug out by these adventurers. Feng Wu and the others, including the newly joined Drew, had a total of 15 people. It was a little difficult for 15 people to fit into a team. While Feng Wu and the others were still discussing which passage to take, most people had already chosen their own. When 20 people entered a passage, that passage would disappear. When Feng Wu and the others were discussing which passage to take, 1 or 2 passages had already disappeared. This meant that 40 people had already entered those 2 passages. The remaining people could only choose a passage that didn't have enough people to take. Of the 2 passages that disappeared, one had a trace of golden light. It looked like the light of a treasure. The other was a relatively normal passage. There was no special light, nor did they feel any special energy flashing. In short, this was the most normal passage. Of these 2 passages, one might have a treasure, and the other might not be so dangerous. Naturally, it was the first choice of the adventurers who entered this level. Now, there were only 3 paths left to choose from, and these 3 paths had already been chosen by many people. It was basically impossible for a team to stay together. Fortunately, they didn't have much hope for the whole team to stay together. In the end, everyone decided to follow their own feelings and choose the most suitable passage for themselves. Skycliff unsurprisingly chose the passage that emitted cold air. Ajur chose the red passage. This guy was red, and he was most sensitive to this color. Ajur originally wanted to take Feng Wu with him through the red passage. Unfortunately, after Ting Feng, Ting Yu, Ruglaz, and Elena joined in, the red passage was full. There was no space for Feng Wu at all. Feng Wu didn't care which path she took. To her, it was the same. After waving goodbye to Ajur and the others, Feng Wu chose the path that was so dark that she couldn't even see her own fingers. She originally wanted to take the passage that was full of cold air with Skycliff, but when he saw Feng Wu choose the dark passage alone, he frowned. He was still worried and walked to Feng Wu's side. Drew and Pei Qing also chose the same passage as Feng Wu. As for the rest of the people, they all chose the passage that Skycliff first chose. Those who chose the dark passage were slow or had difficulty choosing. Most of them chose the dark passage because the other passages were full. They had no choice but to choose the dark passage that no one was optimistic about. It was obvious that this path was dangerous. Moreover, it was extremely dangerous. Those who chose this path were either really confident or had no choice. The last 2 passageways were finally filled with people. The entrances to the passageways disappeared, and the cave behind them turned into a mountain wall. There was no light to illuminate the cave. When the light disappeared, some people reflexively tried to use magic to create a ball of light, but they found that magic didn't work. Their magic and combat aura had all disappeared. They seemed to have become ordinary people. What's going on? Since they couldn't see each other, they could only confirm each other's age, gender, and location through their voices. The person who spoke didn't sound very loud. It was a young man, and he didn't seem to be more than 30 years old. At this time, the young man's voice was full of panic. In this continent that relied on strength, without the strength to survive, it was like how modern humans couldn't rely on any high-tech technology. The feeling of losing one's reliance in an instant was not only uncomfortable, but also more of a panic. Chapter 152. Damn it, there really is a problem with this road, we can't use magic. This voice belonged to a middle-aged woman, who seemed to be a magician. The do chi in my body has disappeared, what's going on? Is this the second test? A panicked female voice sounded. Although he couldn't see her face, he knew that she was a young female swordmaster. Xiao Wu, where are you? Ming Shi was still not used to the sudden disappearance of his power. This place really seemed strange. Although he was not used to suddenly becoming a powerless ordinary person, he was more worried about the naive girl who didn't know anything. I'm here. The girl's soft voice sounded. Feng Wu's voice always gave people a soft feeling. At this time, the girl's voice was still so calm, as if nothing could make her panic. At the same time Ming Shi heard the voice, a pair of tender little hands suddenly accurately grabbed his hand. The girl's hands were very soft, and her palms were very small, very different from a man's hands. Xiao Wu? Ming Shi asked with some uncertainty. His palms slightly tightened, wanting to determine if this was Feng Wu's hand. A faint response, and the strength of the grasp, all of these proved to Ming Shi that the owner of this little hand was Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, I'm your big brother Pei Qing. Hearing Feng Wu's voice, Pei Qing accurately found Feng Wu's location. Originally, they were very close, and with the guidance of the voice, it was naturally easy to find. Xiao Wu. This voice was Drew's. In order to prevent getting separated, the four people held hands and firmly held on to the person beside them. Among the others, those who knew each other, like Feng Wu and the others, held hands to prevent getting separated. Those who didn't know each other walked along the mountain wall alone, at least they didn't have to worry about finding their way. The cave was very dark and nothing could be seen. Only the sound of water dripping could be heard. In this dark cave, this sound made people feel even more terrified. Everyone, it's fate that we've all chosen the same path. Let's say something. Don't you think it's scary to not hear anything? You're right. Let's say something. It's too quiet here. It feels so scary. A young female voice sounded and said impatiently. What is this trial trying to test? There's nothing but darkness. I really don't know what kind of results we'll get in the end. Another person spoke up. This time, it was a young man. I think they're trying to test our adaptability. Anyway, as long as we follow this path, we'll definitely be able to get out, the second female voice said again. TSK. How could the inheritance test of the divine tomb be so easy? Judging from the voice, the speaker was obviously a middle-aged man. What the middle-aged man said made sense. If it was just darkness, it wouldn't be able to scare them. This kind of test was really too easy. Although everyone couldn't sense their own strength, there was obviously nothing dangerous in this dark passage. If it was just to make them powerless and have a small black room, this trick might be useful for some new adventurers. For adventurers like them who had been exploring dangerous places all year round, other than the initial shock and discomfort at the beginning, it would make them feel very uncomfortable. The road ahead would only get smoother and smoother. It was impossible for it to pose any substantial threat to them. Feng Wu held Zhe's hand and didn't say anything. Pei Qing and the others didn't say anything either. In this dark environment where they couldn't even see their own fingers, the most worrying thing wasn't the threat from the dark environment, but Ming Shi held the girl's soft hand. The darkness made it impossible to see the faint blush on his face. This was the first time Ming Shi held a girl's hand. Due to his special identity, there were too many girls who secretly approached him since he was young. Over time, he didn't like to get close to girls. Even if he was gentle to all the girls in school, he was always very gentle to them. Only a few of his close friends knew that he didn't like women to get close to him. His identity was destined to attract countless girls to throw themselves at him, so he always had a distant attitude towards women. If Arguros and the others knew that he actually took the initiative to hold a girl's hand, they wouldn't believe it. Ming-Shi laughed self-deprecatingly. The soft touch in his hand was very unfamiliar to him, but he didn't dislike it. Ming-Shi couldn't help but smile. Even if he knew that he couldn't see anything, he couldn't help but look in the girl's direction. He didn't dislike this girl who always proposed to him. Feng Wu was also a little happy. Mo Gue told her that if they wanted to become a couple, they had to start by holding hands. Now that they were holding hands, did it mean that they could become a couple soon? Feng Wu's happy heart was interrupted by a scream. Ah! A person let out a mournful scream, and then the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. What's going on? Is someone being attacked? Fuck. I knew that this damn place couldn't be so peaceful. If it was just testing us with darkness and losing our abilities, then that's child's play. There really is something else. Who did it? What the hell is going on? More and more people spoke, their voices filled with panic and fear. It was said that there was great fear between life and death. Now they were walking in darkness and had lost all their abilities. An unknown object was killing people. Anyone would panic and be afraid, and this kind of panic and fear would lead them to a more dangerous situation. In the dark tunnel, everyone was on guard. An unknown object was attacking them. How could they not be afraid? Ah! Another scream rang out. In this dark tunnel, it was ear-piercing and eerie. After this scream, a few people suddenly rushed forward along the tunnel. Although they had lost their abilities, they still had strong bodies from years of training. Even if they didn't have strong bodies, they still tried their best to run to the front. Feng Wu and the other three were among those who rushed to the front. After the scream rang out again, they didn't stay there. Instead, they immediately ran forward. Clearly, there were many people who had the same idea as them. How many people who could train in the two-realm battlefield were idiots? In the situation just now, there were undoubtedly two possibilities. One was that something was really attacking them, and the other was that one of the 20 people had made a move. Chapter 153. The second possibility was more likely than the first. There was only one inheritance in the divine tomb, and only 10 people could enter the last level. There were two ways to enter the last level. The first was to walk faster than everyone else and stand in front of everyone with their strength. The second was to kill the competitors and increase their chances of success. In this pitch-black space, wasn't it the best opportunity to kill one's opponent? Not many people thought of this. Those who thought of it were experienced and powerful adventurers. Don't make a sound. Ming-Shi wrote on Feng Wu's palm with his finger. Feng Wu obediently copied Ming-Shi and wrote a word on Ming-Shi's palm with her finger. Okay. Ming-Shi nodded secretly. This was good. It was pitch black now. As long as they didn't make a sound, it wouldn't be easy for that person to succeed. However, the most important thing now was to get rid of the others. It was too dangerous to walk with others. In the dark passage, there were no more voices, and even the sound of footsteps was almost inaudible. It seemed that everyone had restrained their auras and footsteps, not wanting to be the next target of the person who secretly made a move. Ming-Shi's group of 4 held hands and sped up. In this pitch-black environment, the risk factor was too high. It was best to leave as soon as possible. Finally, they found a glimmer of light not far ahead. Seeing this glimmer of light, everyone's spirits were lifted. Great, they could finally get out. Pei Qing and Drew were especially excited. The feeling of rushing along hand in hand wasn't very good. Now, they could finally get out. Oh yeah. With the guidance of the light, everyone sped up immediately. The others who had been walking not far from Feng Wu's group rushed to the exit at full speed. They all remembered that there were only 10 spots. If they didn't hurry, the spots would definitely be snatched up by others. Xiao Wu, let's go too. Don't let these guys snatch up all the spots. Pei Qing said and wanted to break free from Feng Wu's hand. Now, Feng Wu's left hand was holding Ming Shi, and her right hand was holding Pei Qing. The boys consciously protected Feng Wu, the only female. As they spoke, many people who had fallen behind rushed forward. No one wanted to fall behind others at this time. Don't go, it's dangerous. Feng Wu grabbed Pei Qing's hand and said with a serious face. Although Pei Qing couldn't see her expression, he could hear the girl's seriousness in her voice. Pei Qing stood obediently and didn't fight for the spot with that person. Drew's life was saved by Feng Wu, and with the Feng Wu girl's help on the grasslands, he naturally wouldn't doubt Feng Wu's words. He stood there obediently holding Pei Qing's hand and didn't rush forward. Xiao Wu, do you know what danger lies ahead? Pei Qing asked curiously. I don't know. That place gives me a very bad feeling. Feng Wu said honestly. Perhaps it was because Feng Wu's heart was as pure and flawless as her sword, so she was always able to detect things with a bad aura rather quickly. I don't know if there's really an exit in front. Xiao Wu, do you know? Drew asked casually. He didn't think that Feng Wu would answer this question. No matter how powerful Feng Wu was, she had never entered the cave. How could she know the situation inside? There's no exit. There's only a magical beast, and it's a very powerful magical beast. Ming Shi suddenly said. You know? Pei Qing was surprised and asked. Even Feng Wu could only discover that there was danger in the cave, but Ming Shi even knew what was inside. This was too inconceivable. Well, I smell a magical beast. The closer I get to the cave, the stronger the smell. Ming Shi secretly frowned as he looked at the cave. He had a bad feeling. The magical beast in the cave gave him a very bad feeling. That feeling didn't come from an ordinary magical beast, but more like a vicious beast. Of course, he didn't say this out loud. If he let them know that there was a vicious beast in the cave, he was afraid that they would be even more uneasy. The so-called vicious beast was also a type of magical beast. They were born cruel and bloodthirsty. There was only killing in their hearts. It was a type of magical beast that wasn't terrifying. Well, Senior Ming Shi is right. Feng Wu's voice sounded. Her voice was still so soft, like soft cotton candy. Feng Wu also had something she didn't say. She felt that the magical beast had a very bad aura. Feng Wu girl had always been an animal lover. She liked many small animals, but now she didn't like the unknown magical beast not far away. She always felt that the magical beast wouldn't like her. What do we do now? Aren't we going in? Drew asked. Let's go this way. Ming Shi took the lead in front and led the four to another road. It turned out that this was actually a fork in the road. In the darkness, there was no way to see the road, but Ming Shi could see that there was a fork in the road. As expected of the fifth-year chief student of Notre Dame du Starlight, Pei Qing and Drew thought with some admiration. At the same time, they also thought about when they could become so powerful that they could find the way even if they couldn't see. How did you find out that there was a road here? Pei Qing asked curiously. It's the sound of the wind. The sound of the wind came from this road. It proves that there is still a road here. Ming Shi explained lightly. Pei Qing finally understood and didn't ask the reason. If he heard the sound of the wind, please forgive him for not being able to hear anything now that his ability had disappeared. The four of them walked together hand in hand. At this time, in the Shining Cave, there was a big battle. The few people who entered the cave first were either dead or injured. There were clearly 20 people who entered this road, but now there were only 12 people left. 8 people had died on this road. No one would have thought that one of the 4 great ferocious beasts, the sky-devouring wolf, lived in this cave with light. As one of the 4 great ferocious beasts, the sky-devouring wolf's ability was needless to say. Everyone on the continent knew that the sky-devouring wolf, one of the 4 great ferocious beasts, only had the instinct to devour things since birth. There was a sky-devouring wolf in the Book of Beasts that directly swallowed all the people and things in a small country. Although the Star Hall sent people to execute the sky-devouring wolf on the spot, the lives that were lost could no longer be recovered. Since then, the sky-devouring wolf's name could be said to be the fiercest in the continent. Other than the other three great ferocious beasts and divine beasts, there was really no other beast that could compare to the sky-devouring wolf. "Damn it, get out of here quickly." A middle-aged swordsman raised his sword and roared. The sky-devouring demonic wolf wasn't stupid. How could it let the prey in its mouth escape just like that? After entering this cave, everyone had to be its food. Chapter 154. After being locked up in this place for so many years, it hadn't had a good meal in a long time. Now that a group of people came in to die, it would be a waste if it didn't devour them. The sky-devouring wolf looked at the group of people entering the cave as if it was looking at food. Other than Feng Wu's group of 4, there were still 8 people alive in the cave. Those who were able to survive until now were all top experts. Even if the 8 of them gathered together, they still wouldn't have the confidence to deal with the sky-devouring wolf. The sky-devouring wolf's ferocious reputation was too well known. Facing such a ferocious beast, anyone would have to admit defeat. Think of a way to leave this cave. The sky-devouring wolf has been restrained. As long as we leave this cave, we will be safe. A female magus said. Everyone nodded. The human side and the beast side faced each other with a small distance between them. This standoff didn't last long. A male magus pushed the female magus who was standing in front of him out of the cave. When the beast was distracted, the rest of them reacted quickly and fled to the entrance. Since entering the cave, everyone's strength had recovered to its peak. With the support of magic and Do Chi, they were able to survive for so long under the sky-devouring wolf's claws. If not for that, they would have already died in the mouth of the sky-devouring wolf. The magus who pushed the female magus was the 6th elder of the Lienya clan, Shiat. Shiat was a dark magus. He was born a dark magus. According to legends, dark magi were rarer than light magi. The reason why Shiat chose this path was because he was a dark magus. Not only was he not afraid of darkness, he was also very fond of it. What Shiat didn't expect was that after entering this cave, he would lose his strength and almost get killed. This was already humiliating enough for Shiat. He didn't expect his luck to be so bad. He originally thought that he had found the exit, but he didn't expect that not only was it not the exit, but there was also a man-eating beast living here. Fortunately, Shiat was already a great magus. After recovering his strength, he began to think of a way to escape. Although he was a great magus, he didn't have any advantage in front of this beast. Fortunately, his strength was not weak, and he quickly thought of a good idea. Because of this, he pushed the female magician out. As long as one of them attracted the attention of the ferocious beast, he could escape. What Shiat didn't expect was that the other 6 people's reactions weren't slow either. Shiat quickly got up and dashed towards the cave entrance. The devourer wolf was a beast blessed by the heavens, and its intelligence was already comparable to a human's. Naturally, it did not fall for Shiat's trick. Its huge wolf body stood in the cave, and its black fur actually had a trace of red light. This was the phenomenon of condensing magic power. Sure enough, after one breath, a huge energy ball shot out from Sky Wolf's mouth and hit the entrance of the cave. Because of the attack of the energy ball, the people running at the front had no choice but to dodge. If they didn't dodge and were hit, even if they didn't die, they would be half dead. Damn it! A male swordsman cursed and took out an item from his space ring. It was actually a teleportation scroll. This was a short-distance teleportation scroll. Even if they were teleported out, they would still be on the same path. The swordsman tried to use his Do Chi to activate the scroll, but who would have thought that it would be useless? The scroll didn't show any signs of activation. It can't be activated. The swordsman cursed, and the other people's faces also turned ugly. No one wanted to die here. If they couldn't use the teleportation scroll, then they would lose their only hope of survival. This made the other 7 people's faces turn ugly. The female magician who was plotted against didn't die. The devourer wolf didn't care about her at all. Instead, it stared at the 7 people who were trying to escape. With the intelligence of the devourer wolf, it naturally wouldn't do something as stupid as giving up 7 pieces of meat for a piece of meat. Yes, in the eyes of the devourer wolf, everything in front of it was delicious meat. They were nothing but food for the devourer wolf, nothing more. No matter how much the food resisted, it was impossible for them to escape the fate of being eaten. The devourer wolf was very confident in its own strength. Although it had been imprisoned in this place for tens of thousands of years by a damned fellow, and its strength had been stagnant at the moment it was imprisoned, so what? Before it was imprisoned here, it was already a powerful magical beast among magical beasts. It was completely confident that it could make all of these humans enter its stomach. The devourer wolf eyed its food covetously. Feng Wu and the other 3 people walked along the path in the dark. The further they walked, the more mysterious the path became. At first, they couldn't see anything. Later on, they couldn't even hear anything. Finally, they even lost their senses. There was no sight, no hearing, no touch. Walking on this path, they were holding each other's hands, but they couldn't feel each other's presence. Was there anything more terrifying than this? The 4 of them couldn't do anything. The only thing they could do was to keep moving forward. Only by leaving this place could they return to normal. The long dark path continued. At the same time, on the other red path, it wasn't peaceful either. Fire, there was fire everywhere. Walking on this path was like walking on lava. The temperature was getting higher and higher. Many of the weaker people just spontaneously combusted and turned into ashes. Only 10 people were left in the team of 20, including Ajur, Elena, Ruglaz, and the siblings Tingfeng and Tingyu. The brother and sister were the weakest among them, but they were both members of the expert team. As the team leader, Ajur naturally took good care of them, which was why the brother and sister were able to survive to this day. On the other ice and snow road, the situation was similar to this one. The whole passage had been frozen, and from time to time, there would be cold winds blowing. On this frozen passage, the ice and snow underground would occasionally turn into magic beasts to attack them. The further they went, the stronger the magic beasts attacking them. Rika and Eve both suffered minor injuries, while the others were still fine. Because they were strong enough, they didn't suffer any injuries. The dark path seemed to have no end. Feng Wu couldn't sense the people around her. She could only keep walking forward. Fortunately, Feng Wu was a simple-minded person. In the mouth of her dantian, there was Xiaochun who lived and chatted with her. After completely losing her sense of hearing and touch, Xiaochun had already contacted Feng Wu. Feng Wu knew from Xiaochun that if she could successfully complete this path, her strength would increase greatly. If she couldn't complete it, she would be stuck on this path forever. She might even go crazy. Chapter 155. Those who had never been locked up in a small dark room would never know how terrifying it was. When a person lost all their senses and was locked up in a dark passage, they would feel as if they were the only one left in the world. At that time, it would be amazing if they didn't go crazy. After walking for who knew how long, they finally saw light ahead. It was an entrance to a cave. Feng Wu instinctively walked toward the light. She could not sense the others, so she did not know whether they were beside her or not. She only knew that they would meet at the end. Ming Shi walked into the cave with a pale face. He realized that the cave was filled with light, and the elemental energy was very thick. After everything that he had just experienced, even if he was extraordinarily intelligent, he had almost been trapped in the eternal darkness, unable to escape. Other people did not know the history of this dark tunnel, but Ming Shi, after losing his sense of sight, hearing, smell, and touch, remembered this dark tunnel. This passageway had appeared in the ancient times of Yao Yuan. Although it was unknown who had originally created this passageway, it was famous for its fearsomeness during the ancient times. It was said that in ancient times, there were humans who cultivated to the level of gods. For the development of the human race, most of the gods would leave their inheritances on this land, hoping that more humans could become gods and strengthen the power of the human race. And in the places where the postnatal gods left behind their legacies, there would often be such a dark corridor. This corridor was called the Nightmare Corridor. To the humans of that time, the trials of the Nightmare Corridor were like nightmares. Once humans entered this tunnel, they would lose all sense of the outside world. They could not see, hear, smell, or feel anything. And that was not the scariest part. If you felt fear in the center of this tunnel, then your fear would be magnified infinitely. Any emotion would be magnified many times over. Those with a lower tolerance would go insane before they could even walk out, and most would die in the nightmare tunnel. Now she was sure that this tunnel was created based on the principles of the nightmare tunnel. With great risks came great rewards. Those who successfully walked out of the nightmare tunnel without their minds being affected would have their state of mind improved by more than one level. When the time came, it would be extremely helpful in raising one's strength. In ancient times, most of the famous peerless experts had passed through the nightmare corridor. As long as they weren't unlucky enough to die before they became strong enough, they would all become peerless experts in the future. There were even many who ascended to the celestial realm. From the ancient times until now, tens of thousands of years had passed. This nightmare tunnel had disappeared in the long river of history after God chose death. He did not expect to see this famous nightmare tunnel again today. After successfully walking out of the nightmare tunnel, he discovered that there was no one else in the cave. He knew that other than himself, no one else had come out. In this cave, there was nothing but a slightly smaller hole. It seemed that the exit was in that small hole. She looked at the hole and did not immediately move forward. Instead, he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes to cultivate his Do Chi and magic. Few people knew that she was a peerless expert who cultivated both magic and martial arts. Because of his bloodline, he inherited the power of his ancestors from the moment he was born. In the Notre Dame du Starlight, there were not many people who could be his teachers in magic other than the two deans. Therefore, when he entered the Notre Dame du Starlight, he directly joined the swordmaster department. To him, learning the sword in the Sacred Institute was much more useful. Normally, when he faced enemies, he would use the sword most of the time. Only on rare occasions would he use magic. Time ticked by, but she was still sitting there motionless. Only when he heard light footsteps entering the cave did he slowly open his eyes. There seemed to be a golden light flashing in his eyes, making him look incomparably mysterious. Senior Ming-Shi. As soon as Feng Wu entered the cave, she saw Ming-Shi sitting there cultivating. Her heart was filled with joy. She opened her eyes wide and walked over to Ming-Shi. Ming-Shi stood up and looked at the young girl walking towards him. Her expression was normal, but because it was so normal, it gave Ming-Shi a strange feeling. Even though the corridor of nightmares would not actively attack, it was able to crush a person's mental fortitude. Even with his mental fortitude, it was extremely dangerous to pass this stage. The endless darkness and loneliness was not something that anyone could withstand. Even a grown man like him could not endure it. Who would have thought that such a petite girl like Feng Wu could do it without flinching? It was simply inconceivable. Xiao Wu, are you all right? Although Feng Wu looked much better than when he came out, he still couldn't help but ask worriedly. Feng Wu obediently shook her head. I'm fine. It's good that you're fine. Sit down and recover. We'll wait for Pei Qing and Drew. She said gently as he rubbed the Feng Wu girl's head. Feng Wu nodded and obediently sat down to cultivate. She sat beside Feng Wu and watched quietly. Although he did not know how strong Feng Wu was, Feng Wu always gave him a very strong feeling. Now that he watched Feng Wu cultivate, this feeling only grew stronger. With the cultivation of Do Chi, he could feel that Feng Wu's body was forming a powerful force. This force did not seem to be as simple as Do Chi. It seemed that the method she used to cultivate Do Chi was somewhat special. Currently on the continent, the method of cultivating Do Chi was the same. Only the sword arts were different. Every family had their own secret techniques. The difference in sword arts, the speed of cultivating Do Chi, and the strength of the sword arts were the main factors that determined whether a sword master was strong or not. He knew a bit about Feng Wu's sword arts. Feng Wu seemed to cultivate a very strong sword art. Among her peers, there were few who could match her. But the method of cultivating Do Qi was the reason why he was most surprised. What kind of method was this? Why did this method of cultivating Do Qi feel more powerful than the normal method of cultivating Do Qi? Although Ming Shi was somewhat curious, he did not intend to ask. Everyone had their own secrets. He himself already had enough. It was something that many people could not catch up with in their lifetime. If he coveted other people's secrets, then he really was not satisfied. After half a quarter of an hour, Feng Wu stopped cultivating. Opening her eyes, she found that Ming Shi was staring at her thoughtfully. If it was an ordinary girl, being stared at by the boy she liked like this, she would have already blushed. Chapter 156. Feng Wu wasn't an ordinary girl. This girl didn't know what it meant to be shy. When she saw Ming Shi looking at her, she also looked back at Ming Shi. Her pair of big eyes stared at him without blinking, making Ming Shi feel embarrassed. Xiao Wu, in the future in front of outsiders, you can't reveal your Do Qi cultivation method, do you understand? Ming Shi was somewhat worried, so he immediately warned her. Feng Wu nodded her small head, very cutely looking at him with her big eyes. Although there was a faint doubt on her small face, she didn't open her mouth to ask why he wanted her to do this. That pure and lovely appearance made Ming Shi's heart flash with a trace of strangeness. To tell the truth, he had seen many women. Some were bold and straightforward, some were lively and lovely, some were gentle and graceful, and some were kind and beautiful. All of these girls were beautiful. Of course, there were also some women. They carried a very heavy selfish desire. These women were beautiful, but they were beautiful with poisonous thorns. Ming Shi had always kept a respectful distance from this kind of woman. He had seen many beautiful and kind women, or vicious and beautiful women, but it was the first time he had seen such a pure and simple woman like Feng Wu. From the first time they met at the hot spring, it seemed that something was quietly changing. He didn't deny that he had a good impression of this pure and beautiful girl, but right now the good impression hadn't risen to the level of love. Whether or not she would fall in love with him in the future, he didn't know, so he just let nature take its course. Besides, he also didn't think that Feng Wu really liked him. Even if Feng Wu had already proposed to him, in the eyes of this girl, he couldn't see the love of a lover, nor could he see the shyness of a young girl. Did this pure and simple girl really know what love was? Ming Shi really doubted this point. Sighing in his heart, Ming Shi rubbed Feng Wu's hair, took out a handkerchief from his body, and bit his finger, using it to write 2 sentences. The main meaning of these 2 sentences was that he left with Feng Wu first. When Pei Qing and Drew came out, they could leave immediately without waiting for them. Leaving the handkerchief in a conspicuous place, he led Feng Wu towards the innermost and smaller cave entrance. Feng Wu saw Ming Shi write some words on the handkerchief with blood. She also saw clearly what was written on it. Without saying a word, she followed Ming Shi into the smaller cave. Inside the innermost cave was a completely different world. There was a strange little tree growing inside. On the tree was a fruit that was flashing with 7-colored light. The whole tree only had 1 fruit, and it looked very extraordinary. Next to the fruit tree was a spring. The spring water was rich in life essence. Just by being close to the lake, one could feel their spirit being shaken. In the entire cave, apart from the spring and the mysterious fruit tree, there was nothing else. This cave was actually a dead end. There was no way out. Seeing no way out, Ming Shi frowned slightly. Then, he began to size up the surrounding environment. There was definitely a way out of this cave, but he didn't know where it was. After carefully looking at every inch of the surrounding ground and stone walls, Ming Shi found that the most suspicious things in this cave were the fruit tree and the spring. Ming Shi began to carefully size up the fruit tree. The more he looked, the more he found that this little tree looked very similar to a spiritual object he had seen in an ancient book. If it was really that thing, although he couldn't use it, it was the best thing for Xiao Wu. However, that thing wasn't easy to obtain. If it was really as he thought, then there would be a fierce battle to fight. Ming Shi pulled Feng Wu's hand and wanted to retreat. He wanted to take Feng Wu away first, and then he planned to fight alone. If he wanted to obtain that legendary spiritual object, there was only one way, and that was to defeat it and erase its consciousness. Ming Shi wanted to take Feng Wu to a safe distance, but Feng Wu didn't. Since entering this cave, Feng Wu focused her attention on the fruit tree in front of her. She found that the fruit on the tree was very strange. After discovering that someone had entered, it seemed to move shyly, as if it wanted to hide itself. Unfortunately, the tree was too small and couldn't block it at all. Feng Wu found that the fruit was secretly looking at her and Senior Ming Shi from time to time. After glancing at them, it quietly hid behind the leaves, although the leaves really couldn't cover anything. Xiao Wu. Ming Shi turned his head in puzzlement. Feng Wu broke free from Ming Shi's hand and wanted to go forward to see that shy fruit. She felt that it was a shy little guy. Don't go up, it's too dangerous. Ming Shi hurriedly pulled Feng Wu back. His heart almost stopped from fright. Did this little girl know what that thing was? It was a famous fierce creature in ancient times. If it wasn't for his special bloodline, he wouldn't dare to challenge that fierce creature before he fully grew up. It's not dangerous. Feng Wu really looked at Ming Shi and said, "But that thing is." Ming Shi was about to explain what it was, but an unexpected situation happened. An ancient sword flew out from Feng Wu's dantian. The sword flew directly to the fruit with a domineering aura. Then the sword flashed, and a big mouth formed by magic power directly swallowed the fruit into its stomach. Then the fruit disappeared, and the spring dried up. The ancient sword seemed to be drunk. It burped, and then flew back to Feng Wu's dantian. Wasn't it supposed to be a tough battle? Ming Shi was a little confused. That was a fierce all-element spirit that grew up by absorbing the blood of gods and demons. In Ming Shi's memories, there was a record of that fruit in an ancient book. That fruit was called Elemental Spirit, or rather, it was not a fruit at all. It was just something that had taken on the appearance of a fruit. Elemental spirits were only born in places where magic elements were the most abundant, and only elemental spirits of one type of magic were born. Every elemental spirit had strong combat power and was very fierce. When they saw something enter their territory, whether it was a human or a magical beast, they would directly kill it, and then absorb the energy of the other party and turn it into their own nourishment. Although elemental spirits had always been fierce, they did represent a great opportunity for humans. No matter who it was, as long as they had an elemental spirit that matched their attribute, even if their aptitude was poor, they could rely on the power of the elemental spirit to become a peerless master. Even if they couldn't become a god, it was absolutely not a problem for them to transcend mortality. Elemental spirits originally only had one type of magic attribute, but there was a situation where a single elemental spirit could evolve into an all-element spirit. That was to absorb the blood of gods and demons as nourishment, and the blood of gods and demons they absorbed was not just a little bit. Moreover, the speed of their evolution was extremely slow. During their evolution, if they were unlucky and were disturbed by others, the evolution would fail. Chapter 157. From this, one could see how rare an all-element fairy was. In the entire history of the continent, an all-element fairy had only appeared once, and it had been subdued by the most talented magician in the continent, Longza Gamer. In the end, both of them had ascended to the divine realm. And now, there was actually an all-element spirit in front of him. No matter how he thought about it, it felt a little surreal. What was even more surreal was that the legendary all-element spirit with off-the-charts combat power was actually eaten by a sword right in front of him. Who could tell him how a sword could eat an elemental fairy? If Ming Shi had been born in the modern world, he would have screamed at the sky. This was illogical. Reality told him that even illogical things could happen, so he had to be calm. Compared to Ming Shi's shock, Feng Wu's emotions were much simpler. She was worried that the shy little fruit had really been eaten by Xiaochun. After communicating with Xiaochun through telepathy, Feng Wu was relieved to know that little fruit was still alive and well. Because of the disappearance of the elemental fairy, the small tree and spring that had originally existed because of the elemental fairy's growth had also disappeared. After the spring water disappeared, a long flight of stairs was discovered at the bottom of the spring. It seemed that this was the path to the final stage. Drew and Pei Qing still hadn't appeared, and they didn't know how long it would take for the two of them to arrive. If they couldn't come out, then it would be too dangerous. Once one entered the nightmare corridor, they would have to come out on their own. Of course, there was another way to bring people out, and that was to find a successor. When that time came, everyone who failed would be teleported out. Other than the successor, no one else would be able to stay in this place. Ming-Shi knew that there was no point in waiting any longer. If they came out later, they would naturally find a way to follow. If they couldn't come out, then he could only hope that someone would inherit this legacy as soon as possible. That way, Pei Qing and the others would also be teleported out. As for him and Feng Wu, even if they waited here, they would not be of any help to the two of them. Rather than waiting here and doing useless work, they might as well continue moving forward. After making the decision, Ming-Shi and Feng Wu walked down the long black staircase one after the other. Fortunately, both of them had recovered their abilities. Ming-Shi was also a rare dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. It was simply too easy for him to create a light ball to illuminate the area. The long staircase seemed to have no end. Ming-Shi pulled Feng Wu's hand and carefully stood in front, protecting Feng Wu behind him. The stairs were already covered with a thick layer of dust. If one was not careful, they would step on some bones of the dead. These bones naturally did not belong to the divine bone. These were the bones of magical beasts and human corpses that were implicated in this battle. Carefully avoiding the bones on the ground, Ming-Shi looked back at Feng Wu worriedly. Only when he saw that the Feng Wu girl's complexion was normal did he relax. In Ming-Shi's knowledge, other than a tomboy like Elena, any girl would be frightened when they saw so many corpses. Naturally, he was worried that Feng Wu would be frightened as well. Only when he saw that Feng Wu's complexion was normal did he realize that he was worried for nothing. Unexpectedly, this staircase looked very long. He did not expect that they would finish walking after 20 minutes. After walking down the stairs, a large bronze door appeared in front of them. The door was pitch black, and there were no pictures on it. However, it gave off a gloomy and terrifying feeling. Intuitively, Feng Wu did not like what was behind the door. Ming-Shi secretly frowned. His eyes flashed, then returned to normal. He tried to push the door. The bronze door, which was supposed to be extremely heavy, was pushed open just like that. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Senior Ming-Shi is so amazing. Even she did not have the strength to say that. After being praised, Ming-Shi looked back at Feng Wu with some embarrassment. It's not that I'm amazing. It's just that this door looks heavy, but it's actually not heavy. Ming-Shi said this not to be modest or anything. He really did think that the door was not heavy. It was a far cry from its appearance. The door opened with a creak, and another large hall appeared in front of Ming-Shi and Feng Wu. Ming-Shi pulled Feng Wu into the large bronze door. There were already 5 people standing in the large hall. Among these 5 people, most of them were people that Feng Wu and the others were familiar with. There was a Zhe, Zicheng, and Irene. The 3 of them had passed the second round and appeared here. The other 2 people who appeared were the Idori family's 7th elder, Farley. The other was the Inferno mercenary group's 3rd squad leader, Cohen. When Farley saw Ming-Shi and Feng Wu appear in the large hall, he only glanced at them once before moving his gaze away. However, Cohen clearly recognized Ming-Shi and Feng Wu. He nodded at them before moving his gaze away. When Zhe saw Feng Wu, he naturally ran over immediately. "Xiao Wu, you're not hurt, are you?" As he spoke, he rubbed the girl's head. The girl seemed to be in good spirits, so there shouldn't be any injuries. Feeling that she hadn't seen Zhe for a long time, Feng Wu was a little happy. Her eyes curved as she asked, "I'm fine. How about you? What could have happened to me? I'm so strong, who can hurt me?" he said in an insufferably loud voice. When he spoke, his red eyebrows were raised, and he completely ignored the people around him. Senior Ming-Shi, Senior Skycliff, said that he's not interested in magic inheritances, so he won't be coming. Senior Arguros also said that he won't be coming. Irene followed behind Ajur and walked in front of Ming Shi and Fengwu. She then passed on Skycliffe and the others' original words. Zicheng and Irene could understand why Skycliffe didn't want to enter this stage. He was a swordsman, so what was the point of coming to the final stage? Even if he really passed, he wouldn't be able to inherit any magic inheritances. However, the two of them couldn't understand Arguros. Skycliffe didn't want to compete because he was a swordsman. You're a magician, so you don't even know how to fight for a great opportunity placed in front of you. Although they couldn't understand, Ruglaz's withdrawal still made the two of them happy. One less strong opponent would be very beneficial for inheriting a god's magic inheritance in the future. Zicheng and Irene couldn't understand why Arguros didn't try hard to compete for the inheritance, but Mingxi knew that it was all because Arguros' ancestor had a god. Moreover, the god had left behind the inheritance in their family's ancestral land. As a direct descendant of the family, Arguros had already gone to the ancestral land to obtain the inheritance. Since he already had a god's inheritance, he naturally wouldn't be that interested in other inheritances. As for what he obtained himself, it was completely meaningless to him. Chapter 158. Of course, Mingxi wouldn't tell them this, so he'd let them guess on their own. I understand. Mingxi smiled slightly, still as gentle and courteous as ever. Irene's heart trembled. What a disaster. Even though she'd seen countless handsome men in her previous life, she'd never seen a single one that could compare to Mingxi. How did this person grow up to be so beautiful? Zicheng was also a bit shaken. Fortunately, she'd always been a strong-willed person, so she wasn't affected for too long before she returned to normal. Only a faint blush remained on her face. Ajur didn't pay attention to the changes in the two girls beside him. He only looked at Mingxi and said, Senior Elena wasn't injured at the last stage, so she can't come. Ruglaz is taking care of Elena, so Senior isn't coming either. Tingfeng and Tingyu are both swordmasters, so they aren't coming either. Elena was injured? Is it serious? Mingxi asked with concern. Elena was like an older sister to the boys, so they were naturally worried when they heard that she was injured. It's all right, it's not too serious. More than 50% of her body was burned. Ajur said nonchalantly. Zicheng and Irene looked at Ajur with wistful eyes. Half of her body was burned, and you said it wasn't too serious? Then what kind of injury would be considered serious in your heart? Holy shit! Fengwu was a bit worried when she heard that Elena was injured, and that her injuries weren't light. Is Senior Elena really alright? Fengwu bit her lip. She quite liked this senior of hers, Elena, and didn't want her to be injured at all. Don't worry. Although she has many burns on her body and can't see anyone now, as long as she leaves this place, any light magician or a bottle of healing potion will be able to heal her wounds. When the time comes, I guarantee that not even a scar will be left behind. Ajur said confidently as he stroked the Fengwu girl's head. Fengwu was relieved. She believed that Ajur definitely wouldn't lie to her, so she relaxed quite a bit. She took out a big bun from her interspatial ring and began munching on it. When she was in the nightmare corridor earlier, due to the restriction on her powers, she couldn't retrieve anything from her spatial ring. Now that she had finally recovered her powers, she naturally wanted to eat to her heart's content. Fengwu opened her small red mouth and took a few bites of the thin skin bun. The fragrance of the meat filling immediately spread throughout the whole. This fragrance was very alluring, causing everyone's stomach to move. Even Ming, she suddenly felt a little hungry. As for Zicheng and Irene, these two women naturally brought with them food that was even better than Fengwu's bun. The two girls took out good wine and dishes from their interspatial rings. The dishes included roast chicken, sliced duck, fried pork chops, potato cakes, and delicacies. When these dishes were laid out, Fengwu's eyes were glued to them. The words "want to eat" were written all over her face. Everyone, let's eat together. We don't know what kind of test awaits us later. Let's eat first so that we have the strength to face the test. Zicheng's smile was gentle and beautiful. That's right. Everyone, let's eat together. I made this roast chicken and fried pork chops myself. My cooking skills may not be as good as Zicheng's, but Senior Ming Shi, Xiao Wu, and Ajur, if they don't taste good, please tell me directly. I'm quite a person who can take a blow. After saying this, she stuck out her tongue cutely. This action of sticking out her tongue was done wittily and cutely. It faintly revealed a seductive charm. Unfortunately, the two men in front of her were not very interested in women. The other had seen too many beautiful women and had already developed an extraordinary immunity. Neither of them would be interested in Irene. Irene, you're too modest. The dishes you make smell very good. The taste will definitely not be bad. Zicheng modestly praised Irene's cooking skills. With so many delicious dishes laid out, Fengwu and the others naturally did not stand on ceremony. After a long period of mental strain and fighting, Ajur was already hungry. He also had some food in his interspatial ring, but it was all buns, chicken legs, duck legs, and barbecued meat. It was not as sumptuous as the dishes laid out by Zicheng and Irene. Ming Shi did not stand on ceremony. The few of them found a place to sit on and began to eat heartily. At this time, Cohen and Farley, who were not far from Fengwu and the others, were a little hungry from the aroma of the food in the room. Farley was fine. In his heart, nothing was more important than the inheritance of a god. He did not care about food. He only took a glance and turned his gaze away. His whole attention was on the great hall. Cohen, on the other hand, was holding a roasted chicken and a bottle of ale. He sat alone in a corner and ate with big mouthfuls. Although the dishes were not as sumptuous as those of Fengwu and the others, he still ate to his heart's content. As the few of them were eating, a bronze door suddenly appeared in the middle of the great hall. Then, an old man and a girl appeared. The girl was about the same age as Fengwu. She looked smart and cute, but her eyes seemed to have a natural charm that made people want to lose themselves in them. The old man looked very old, but his spirit and appearance were not bad. No one dared to look down on this old man and young girl. Being able to come here was a proof of one's strength. The old man and the young girl only glanced at the 7 people present. Their eyes paused on Fengwu and the others for a while before moving away. The young girl helped the old man find a place to sit down. The old man and the young girl just sat there quietly, not saying a word. After the old man and the young girl arrived, another quarter of an hour passed before the last person came. This person was the Inferno Mercenary Group's 3rd Squad's vice-captain, Mirian. Mirian had always been a low-key person in the 3rd Squad. Under normal circumstances, he would not make a move. But if he did, perhaps even the captain, Cohen, would not be his opponent. Mirian was a magician, a metal magician. Moreover, his magic level was not lower than that of the Idori family's 7th elder, Farley. Both of them were in the realm of great magicians. It was just that Farley was famous, while Mirian had always been low-key. He rarely made a move in front of outsiders. When Farley saw that the person who came was Mirian, his expression changed. Mirian was the vice-captain of the 3rd Squad of the Inferno Mercenary Group. Farley did not know how strong he was, but this guy was really a magician. Originally, he thought that only Cohen would be his opponent. Moreover, Cohen was a swordsman, so it was impossible for him to compete with him for the inheritance. He was only afraid that Cohen would shamelessly come and make trouble. Now that Mirian had appeared, the situation had changed. Even if he had the strength of a great magician, he would not be able to handle Mirian and Cohen together. The key point was that Cohen was a great swordsman. His strength was not necessarily weaker than a great magician. If Cohen entangled him and allowed Mirian to get the inheritance, it would be very disadvantageous for him. Chapter 159. The 10 people who had passed the second trial had finally arrived. The first to arrive were Fengwu and Ming Shi, Irene, Zicheng, Ajur, Cohen, Abel, Mylane, as well as the grandfather and grandson who had very little presence. 10 people had arrived, which meant that the final inheritance was about to begin. When Miliena appeared, Cohen didn't have time to say anything to Miliena, who had just arrived. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. A black copper door appeared in front of everyone. This door was exactly the same as the one that led Fengwu and the others to the main hall. They all knew that this should be the place that led to the final trial. The remaining people would receive the inheritance of God Caven. No one would not want the inheritance of a god. When this door appeared, it meant that the time for everyone to coexist peacefully had passed. Once they stepped through this door, it was very likely that they would become opponents in a life-and-death battle. As the seventh elder of the Adori family, Farley had an unimaginable obsession with strength. Almost as soon as the door appeared, Farley was the first to rush in. Just like the door that appeared at the end of the second trial, this door was easily pushed open. It didn't need much strength to open it directly. Farley walked in as soon as the door opened, followed by Cohen and Mylane. Both of them were high-ranking members of the Inferno mercenary group. In this kind of place, they were naturally united. After the two of them went in, the old man who had been silent all this time also brought his granddaughter, or the family's younger generation, into the portal. After waiting for everyone to enter, Fengwu and the others went in. After everyone had entered, the teleportation gate disappeared. Only then did Ming Shi and the others realize that they had arrived outside the dilapidated palace. They could vaguely see the shadow of the palace's former grandeur. Now, there were only broken tiles, broken walls, collapsed stone pillars, and other things that had been destroyed beyond recognition. The dark sky was like a huge dark beast with its mouth wide open, waiting for its prey to approach. The palace was in shambles, but they could see a door that was still intact. Standing in the same place, they could see that the door was emitting a faint red light. And from the ajar door, they could see that those who had come in before them had already entered the palace. Zicheng and Irene were about to enter the main hall, but they were suddenly blocked by a hand that suddenly stretched out. "Senior Ming Shi?" Zicheng's gentle eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. Irene also looked up at Ming Shi in confusion. Ajur also immediately pulled Fengwu behind him and made a defensive posture. "Don't go, something is wrong here." Ming Shi's gentle voice had a trace of unusual coldness. Zicheng bit her lips and looked at the palace door with some reluctance. As long as she walked in, she would have the opportunity to obtain the inheritance. She just needed to walk a few more steps and she would arrive. She was very conflicted in her heart. For a moment, she didn't know whether she should listen to this senior or not. Irene's reaction was more direct. "Don't worry about Senior Ming Shi, nothing will happen." If something really happened, how could we not hear anything? Irene smiled and said very calmly. With the memories of her previous life as a foundation, she wasn't worried at all. In her memory, although the process of Zicheng obtaining the divine artifact was thrilling, in the end, obtaining the inheritance was very simple. As long as she reached the final stage, she could directly obtain the inheritance crystal and use her divine sense to receive all the knowledge in the inheritance crystal. Then, she would be able to obtain God Caven's cultivation method. Although it was very strange that a trace of Caven's consciousness had appeared this time, it could also be because there were more people coming. In the book, only the female lead and the people from the Adori family had come to this place. Even Eve and Elena were not brought by the female lead, but because they were too close, she had no choice but to bring them. In a situation where she knew that there was no danger, how could she let go of this god's inheritance? This was a god-ranked inheritance. For someone like her who didn't have the favorability system to exchange favorability for anything, it was simply too tempting. "It's very dangerous. The aura inside is very dark. There's something bad inside." Ming Shi still shook his head. He didn't want to let this junior sister risk her life. Something that could make him feel danger was definitely not simple. He only hoped that it wasn't as he guessed, otherwise, they would be in danger. "Senior, you're thinking too much. This used to be the two-realm battlefield. It's normal for there to be dark aura, so Senior, you don't have to worry. I can protect myself." "That's settled, I'll go first." While speaking, Irene's body flashed and left Ming Shi's reach. She gave Ming Shi and the others a reassuring look, then waved her hand and walked towards the door that led to the palace. When Zicheng saw this scene, the struggle in her eyes disappeared. She felt that there was something inside that belonged to her, so she must take it back. No matter what, she would have to let down Senior Ming Shi's good intentions. Senior, Ming Shi seemed to know what she wanted to say. He just waved his hand helplessly. Go. I know you won't be satisfied if you don't take a look. If you want to go, then go. Ming Shi wasn't a saint in the first place. Just now, he wanted to protect these two juniors who were obviously ambitious for the god-level inheritance because they were seniors and juniors from the same school. However, the two of them didn't seem to care about his protection, so he didn't want to be nosy. Senior, I'm sorry. After looking at Ming Shi apologetically, Zicheng followed behind Irene and entered the palace. Out of the 10 people who entered the last round, only 3 didn't enter. Ming Shi and Ajur carefully protected Feng Wu in the middle. They both knew that there might be a big battle later. Feng Wu obediently let them protect her in the middle, but her small eyebrows slightly wrinkled. She smelled blood, a very strong smell of blood. There's blood, a lot of blood. Feng Wu pulled Ming Shi's sleeve, her small red mouth slightly open. Blood. Ming Shi knew that Feng Wu wouldn't lie. She must have found something. Just like that time at the small hotel, they didn't find anything, but Feng Wu saw something that only necromancers could see. In the palace? Ming Shi asked. Feng Wu nodded, confirming Ming Shi's guess. What do we do? Do we go in? Ajur asked hesitantly. At this moment, a voice came from the sky. This voice was no doubt the voice of God Kavan. You 3 little fellows, don't you want to come in and fight for this god's inheritance? Come on, little fellows, the inheritance is inside. Come on in, come on in. Only the 10 of you can determine the person who will inherit the inheritance. Come on in, everyone is waiting for you. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.